Okay, welcome everyone to the Ojai City Council meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina. Here. Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Let's see. Randy, would you lead us in the pledge?
I sure will, Mayor. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes in the order, or is everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, seeing none, if there's no objection, then the agenda is approved as submitted. We have a presentation coming up here in just a second, but I want to, for the benefit of the audience, I see some new faces out there, and I usually don't go through this, but we have a crowd and we have a lot of cards, and the public comment is to address subjects that are not on the regular agenda for discussion. If your comments are related to items, two? Is that where I start, Bill? 2
through 6.
Yeah, 2 through 6, then you don't, we appreciate you not attempting to discuss those early. That way we group it together and we have a conversation possibly out of it. So on the public comment, you can bring up whatever concerns you, but there is a time limit on it. And because of the number of people speaking, I'm going to have to hold you to the time. I was thinking of cutting it to 2 minutes from the 3 minutes, but I will stay with the 3 minutes, as I know that's a pressure on everybody to try. But please, when I start to do this and smile at you, that means you haven't been watching the light. And when the red light comes on, say, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And okay, now that we have the ground rules, let us go to our presentation. And we have Andy Calderwood from the Ag Commissioner's office to tell us a little bit about a topic that seems to be near and dear to a lot of people's hearts and their wallets.
Thank you very much,
Welcome, Andy.
Ojai City Council, for giving me the opportunity to make a presentation here.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. So what I would like to talk about briefly is industrial hemp, this new crop that we're just starting to see grown in Ventura County. So what is hemp? Hemp is a very old product. George Washington grew hemp. If you go to Mount Vernon now, his old home, you'll see that they've planted for about a year and a half now. They planted hemp crops, and you can see people in old-timey clothes harvesting the hemp. This was a very commonly grown plant. It was grown a lot in Kentucky and other Appalachian states. Though I have a Department of Agriculture, it's actually in our library, Department of Agriculture report on the state of agriculture in America that has a chapter on hemp, written in 1863, and the author advocates that perhaps Iowa and Nebraska would be even better places to grow hemp than the Appalachians where it was grown. So, now, according to the law, industrial hemp is cannabis sativa, and that's the same plant as marijuana, but it's cannabis sativa with a low THC content. That's tetrahydrocannabinol. And if it's 0.3% dry weight THC or less, the law, both federal and state adopting the same standard, consider it industrial hemp. If it's higher than that, then it's considered cannabis. So even though they're both cannabis sativa, in the law, cannabis means pot, industrial hemp means not. So this is a map of sort of what's been going on in the nation in the last few years. The blue states on the map are states that have been growing hemp for several years. Hemp was made legal once again. It had been illegal for a long time. The 2014 federal farm bill permitted states to have pilot programs to grow hemp. And so some of our neighbors, Oregon, Nevada, Colorado, Montana. Those were places where hemp has been grown now for several years. And then with the 2018 Farm Bill, we now have California, Arizona, really much of the rest of the country. There are just a few holdouts you can see there, Texas, Idaho. But most of the country is at least going to give hemp a try. And this is just an expansion of that chart there. You can see in 2018 what the principal states were. Montana, Kentucky, Oregon, and is that Oregon? Oh, I can't see which the other one was. Colorado, maybe. So there were kind of 4 big states for hemp production prior to this year. It looks like this year, with all of the hemp that we're growing in Ventura County, we might possibly be growing 1% of the nation's hemp in this county, if the numbers hold up. Now, the numbers are preliminary. A lot of agencies like CDFA and things like that that are amassing this data have incomplete data. It has to come from local sources, and it bleeds in, and it's put into databases kind of slowly. So we don't really know what ultimately our proportion of the national crop will be, but it appears that it'll be significant this first year.
Yeah, my understanding is it'd be between Tennessee and Kentucky in Ventura County by itself.
Is that
Tennessee is 3,338, Kentucky is 6,700.
Yes, closer to Tennessee,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
And the white states are states that aren't growing.
White states are, yeah, that have not,
Just anything. They're just not.
they're not allowing hemp to be grown right now.
So states have that right.
Yes,
Communities
absolutely.
have that right. Counties have that right.
Counties have the right to prohibit it, cities, municipalities, yes.
Okay.
At least that's the way it's being interpreted. There are some hemp growers who challenge that notion, but that's the way it's broadly interpreted, that municipalities have the right to say yea or nay to this crop. So this is what hemp might have looked like on George Washington's farm or in a Roman villa 2,000 years ago. It was a fiber crop, very tall. If you want to grow it for fiber, you get like 5,000 pounds per acre of the stuff, and maybe $250 to $300 per acre. So that's not very much money, not for expensive Ventura County property. So we don't see many people growing the old traditional fiber hemp. This is what you'll see a lot in Canada. This is kind of a short, narrow, almost grain-like looking crop. It's the same species, but it looks sort of like a wheat field from a distance. And this is hemp for grain, and what that means is this is hemp grown for the seed as food. Same way you'd grow corn or wheat or something like that. So you can see this in Trader Joe's. You can get the hemp seed itself in little bags, or you can get granola or cereal that has hemp seed added. Almost all of that comes from a single grower in Canada. And there's the seed there. It's actually pretty delicious. If you've ever had chia seeds, which are native, it reminds me of that. Very nutritious, very rich in omega-3 oils and things like that. And if you grow it for grain, you can get maybe a ton of seeds per acre and maybe $1 per pound if you're lucky. So you're still talking about a relatively low-value crop. $2,000 per acre is a low-value crop for Ventura County. So this is what they're going to grow in Ventura. This is the McGrath Ranch out near Camarillo. And these plants are, this is maybe about a month ago. And they're about 2.5, maybe 3 feet tall. And what they're growing here is hemp for cannabidiol, which is CBD for short. It's one of the cannabinoids. There are lots of these lipid compounds that are related that are found in cannabis, and many of them have been found to have interesting effects, beneficial effects on people. The jury's still out. There's a lot of testing that needs to be done on the effects of these chemicals, but they're widely regarded as at least having potential of being useful compounds for pain relief and other things. So the way that this is grown is that these resins, both for marijuana and for CBD, are produced on the flower blossoms. So as the plant matures, and the plant needs to see the day length decreasing for it to start flowering. So it's very dependent upon the season. And so it's right about now that the flowers are starting to come out because we passed the peak of summer. And so these flowers will come out and they're seeking pollen, and they're actually depositing the resin on the petals in order to capture pollen. This is a wind-pollinated plant, the same way wheat or corn is. And so if there is pollen around, the flowers will capture it, and they'll begin to devote their energies into producing seed. That's not what the grower for CBD wants. He wants to starve the plants of pollen. It's the frustrated female flowers that can't find pollen, that produce extra resin, and don't devote the energy of the plant to making seed.
You got to pull all the males.
They have to cull the males. The old-fashioned way is you just plant a crop and you pull out half the crop, the males. The new-fashioned way is to use what's called feminized seed. And feminized seed is a process whereby the parent plant of the seed you're going to use is treated chemically so as to suppress the Y chromosome. The details are sort of hard to follow, but the idea is that the seeds resulting from that treatment will all be female, almost all. So almost all of the plants, or practically all, will be females, and you'll have to do relatively little culling. You almost always have to pull out a few rogue males in the. And so if you're seeing the people out in the field with hefty bags, that's what they're doing. They have to put the hefty bag over the plant and then rip it out in order to keep the pollen from scattering. So it looks sort of like an assassin grabbing somebody to throw him into a van. So you might see a lot of this activity of large groups of workers out there putting a bag over the crop, and that's what they're doing. They're roguing the males out.
Yes, right.
So, and it's the same with marijuana. Essentially, the plants look about the same. We're trying to do the same thing with both crops. We're trying to get resins to be produced in large amounts on the flowers. So the stature of the plants look the same. They're very similar plants, and the culturing of the plants look the same. We both want, for both of those, you want a pollen-free environment. So they say that this will get about $60,000 to the acre. Now you're talking. So strawberries, you get something like that. If you don't know anything about strawberry farming, you might not realize that from 1 acre, 1 year, Ventura strawberries, you get 25 tons of strawberries from 1 acre. That's very intensive farming. And, depending on prices, you can get that $60,000, but it's very expensive. All the labor and all the infrastructure and everything that goes into making strawberries, it's an expensive game, and so not everybody's making money even at $50,000, $60,000 an acre.
Right, and a lot of chemicals, though,
Yes.
too.
A lot of chemicals, a lot of plastic. It's a costly process. Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
with some bad side effects, yeah.
So anyway, this is a crop that people are interested in, and as maybe something to rotate in, maybe to rest the land with a less intensively farmed crop. Though the crops I've seen do have plastic mulch. This actually doesn't right here, but so it still remains to be seen what the impacts of hemp are compared with other crops. Different people are farming it in different ways. So this is a snapshot. You guys have a better monitor than other people. The little green dots didn't show up very well on other. This is a Google Earth file, a KMZ file that we created from the registrations that we got. If anybody wants us, contact the Ag Department. We can send this to you. You can zoom in and out. You can click on the little objects there and see who's growing at that spot. So it's a browsable, zoomable, active layer that you can look at to see what's going on in hemp in our county. It's a little old, so we want to make a new one, update it.
What about the odor?
Well, I'll get to that.
Well, I'm hoping, not too.
Okay, all right. I don't want to belabor. So this is just the big picture. You can see there's a lot going on in the Oxnard Plain. That's the heart of it.
Yeah, and growing in the Santa Clara Valley too, right? I mean,
Santa Clara Valley, there's a big plantation out by Piru, the
Right,
Camulus
I've
Ranch.
seen
There's
that.
some just south of the city of Fillmore across the river, Giberson Road. So there are a few west of Santa Paula as well, some major plantings. So this is what we see in the county. We see CBD production. We see seed for people to grow CBD hemp. So there'll be people producing seed crops for other farmers. Similarly, people sprouting seed and producing transplants. That's kind of a specialty. You might want to plant stuff in a field, but you're not really expert at germinating the seed. So you'll have nurseries producing transplants, which we have in other crops. And we may have some dual use like they have in Europe, where they get the CBD from kind of the top of the plants, and then they scrape up the rest and use that for fiber. So we charge $900 a year to register. They have to use approved seed cultivars, which means that they have to, there has to be a provenance which establishes that the seed is low THC. And there has to be a sample taken, and it has to pass the drug test within a month of harvest. And that's about to happen. We've gotten our first harvest reports, so harvest is coming up. The earliest harvest will be later this month. Now, the concerns, as was alluded to, we have several. Odor. Depending on who you talk to, this is said to be as stinky as pot. Some of the growers say that it depends on the balance of terpenes in the plant, and that you can actually select for varieties that are less stinky than others. And so that's a potential for regulating this down the line. If there are some varieties that are really stinky, then we would have to prohibit those near homes and allow some of the less stinky ones, where if they're out in the middle of the Oxnard Plain, it wouldn't matter so much. So,
Can I ask about the odor?
yes.
Is the odor seasonal, I mean, all year round?
Yes, the odor is seasonal.
Seasonal.
The odor derives from those resins that are produced at the flowers. And so this mass of flowers called the bud, that's the stinkiest part, and that only develops late in the season. So right about now is when we should expect that odor to kick up. All the fields that I've visited were not even in flower yet. I'm told there are some in the south of the Oxnard Plain, and I think Camulus Ranch is in flower now. So there are just a few that are starting to flower, so the test is really going to come in the next month or two.
And it lasts for how long? A month or two?
Well, until they harvest it.
And that
so-
is how long?
I really can't say. Maybe a month.
A
Maybe
month.
Maybe longer. We'll have to see. It depends on the farmer, whether he doesn't want to risk the crop getting too high in THC, so he might harvest it sooner than might be fully mature. So he has to watch that. So it's too early to say. I'm not sure how long that will be at its peak of odor, but it's toward the very end, and then once harvested, it'll be taken from the field, and it won't be there anymore. That's something to stress. This is an annual crop. This is not something that's planted and is going to be there for 10 years.
Yeah, but when we hear the reports and the lawsuit from the city of Carpinteria over the cannabis being grown in the county areas around their town, how much consideration is being given to that for what's going on now in Ventura County?
Well, we're certainly aware of it. Not only the odor, but the issues of pesticide drift as well.
And what are we doing about it? Anything?
Well, right now we're looking at it. We don't consider that certainly where it's planted that this is presenting any sort of extreme odor hazard right now.
Well, they're planning, didn't they put 7 acres in directly behind the Sierra Robles housing development here in the Ojai Valley?
Well, that's a kind of a small plot. We have plots of 200 plus acres in the Oxnard Plain. And we have one on either side of our office, less than a mile away, and I haven't noticed anything.
You don't have anything
outside.
over your fence, though?
What's that?
I said, you don't have any planted over your backyard fence like some of these folks do?
Correct.
So that, does the ag commissioner or anybody who's issuing the permits take that into consideration as to proximity?
We're not really allowed to, as I'm aware. We don't. That's not really. That's a policy decision to be made by the board. And if they tell us that they want us to do that, if they adopt an ordinance or tell us regulate that at your discretion, which would be an ordinance as well, that's what we would do. But that's a policy decision. That's not a decision which, we don't think this is presenting a hazard. It's not a health hazard. So, if that were the case, then we would act. But the way we do with pesticides. But we don't consider that a potential odor from a temporary hemp planting is a hazard that needs to be mitigated. It could be a nuisance, and
But the
like I
kid-
say, this
but-
year I think we'll get some good data on that.
But the ag commissioner doesn't have conversations with the rest of the board of supervisors or their representatives on these things when there's a lawsuit going on up in Carpinteria against the county of Santa Barbara? I mean, it seems.
No, that's a mischaracterization. Actually, we talk with the
No, it was
board.
a question, not a mischaracterization.
But you said we don't.
No, I said, yeah, I asked you,
Okay.
because it
All right.
sounds like that's what you're telling us. You're saying that's not in your department. Isn't that what you just said?
Well, we talk with the board. Ed, our commissioner, talks with the board about
And
hemp.
the
Yeah.
board doesn't care then? Or here, they're not addressing?
They
this
haven't told him we want a moratorium. Some counties have.
But have they given any guidance on placement of farms? It sounds like there is no restriction right now for the placement of this, other than it has to be zoned properly, but other than that, there's no
Right,
consideration for
the zoning
who
has
might
to
be
permit
nearby.
it. Municipalities have the right to prohibit it. So if a city says you can't plant it in the city, then you can't plant it in the
But
city.
obviously, we can't stop you from planting it on the edge of the city. That's your jurisdiction, not ours.
Well, it's the counties, so that would be up to the board to decide whether that's going to be an acceptable place to plant it.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
You mentioned pesticide drift. Are you talking about pesticide drift from the hemp crop or from other crops drifting onto the hemp?
Other crops drifting onto the hemp.
Okay, I just wanted to be real clear on that. Okay, that's a health hazard. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern in Carpinteria because the value of an acre of pot is about $600,000.
Yes.
So if somebody applies a pesticide which drifts onto the marijuana and then allows an illegal pesticide residue to be on that crop has to be destroyed.
Yes, yeah.
And so it's a liability concern for people making applications next to the hemp. It's less so for, next to the cannabis. It's less so for hemp because the crop's value is less than 10% of what it is. So it's not without concern, but it's a smaller concern.
So, so would that be a condition that you guys would have thought of when you started issuing permits?
Well-
Or were you aware of it at the time, or not aware of it?
Oh, we were, and we tell people who are growing hemp that if they're growing next to, people who are growing other crops, if there's a hemp crop next to them, they have to treat it like any other extremely sensitive site. It's illegal for them to allow drift off-site from their application that does damage to a neighboring area. That's true whether it's a school, a daycare center, or a hemp field. So it just becomes, just because of the peculiarities of it having become only recently legal, and so there are no tolerances for pesticides, traditional pesticides, established yet by the feds, because they're the ones who do that. And they only said you could grow it in November of 2018. So that process takes years. They're saying 3, 4, or 5 years before we have tolerances for various pesticides established on hemp that will permit hemp to have small residues and not be illegal, the way other crops are. So it's something, sure, we're aware of, and that's what we advise growers who are next to hemp, is that this is a very sensitive crop. Do what you would do if that were a school or something like that right next to you. You might do hand spray in the adjacent rows. You make sure the wind is going away from the sensitive site. Basic precautions that you would use to safeguard off-site movement.
So was this an average increase in cultivation going from, how many acres did we have last year? 300 acres in the county, and to what, 4,000 acres is to date? Is that normal, or is that just someone recognizing that
Well, it only
this
became.
is a profitable business?
Yeah. Clearly, people are looking to make some money on this. There's no doubt about that. It's not an altruistic project. I think people are trying to make money the way they are for most things that are farmed, yeah.
And that can't be the only measurement of what our public policy is. I realize your office doesn't deal with that, but it does seem like there should be a coordination. It sounds like, you'd have to be a fool to do anything but grow hemp in this county based on the economics.
Well, it might look that way to some people, but I've been talking to a number of growers, and they're finding out, like any crop, this is a complex plant. It's harder to grow than they thought. Some people who thought they got feminized seed didn't and have to take out half their plants. So now that knocks it down to 30,000 per acre, plus considerable additional labor. And so, there were going to be inefficient players that are weeded out. We're going to have to wait for the national market to mature. We don't really know what the demand for these products are yet. We're probably going to do a lot of research in the United States on the benefits of these things, and maybe they won't turn out to be all that beneficial after all, and people's interest will flag. We don't really know. It's brand new. They've been growing it for a while in Europe. There's, like I say, they've been growing a lot of grain hemp in Canada. So, but it's a new crop for the United States. And, the way we look at it as far as, things like buffers and odors and that kind of thing is this first year is going to give us a lot of data. We're asking all the municipalities and to send information to us on complaints, that sort of thing. And so we can look at, if a plot is this big, this close to a neighborhood, then you can expect a lot of complaints. If it's this far of a setback, then really no complaints. So we might get good data on what sort of setback we might need to have in our particular microclimates here.
Ryan?
You said buffer zones, are there buffer zones for other types of crops? From residential or schools or any other?
There are no buffer zones for any crop that I'm aware of.
All right, so this is treated the same as everything else you could grow. There's no specific like setback requirement or buffer zone requirement. for
Correct. I
growing
mean,
it.
there's a framework, a regulatory framework that is designed to make sure that it's not cannabis.
Okay.
But apart from that framework, we're treating it like any other crop.
Okay.
I mean, there are other stinky crops.
Right. And then if the regulations change and there is a determination that for, let's say, the odor or any other problem that occurs, if those regulations become more onerous, are those individuals that were growing, are they grandfathered in under that? Would they then have to remove their crop to a further distance away? If there was a odor buffer zone created by the county, if you were previously planting, would you be subject to that?
Well, so you're saying if they adopted something like in the next month?
Well, maybe a month, a year, however. I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be. I mean, you said you guys are waiting for data to decide what rules you're going to put in place. What I'm worried about is when you get the data, if there needs to be new rules, is it going to apply to are we just going to have a permanent problem because we can't change the rules that are for those people who are already growing? Or would those rules then be enforced upon those who had already started growing so that they would be subject to those rules?
Well, it would depend entirely on the rules. The devil's
Well, if
in
it
the
was
details.
a buffer
So-
zone for odor, would that be, I gave you the exact.
If the rule was you can't plant it,
Let's say 100 yards from a residential area, just to
right.
throw a number out.
If that's the rule, then that's what we would enforce.
And even though they were growing previously there, they wouldn't be grandfathered in under that regulation to be able to stay where they were?
If that's the way the rule were written, there's nothing about grandfathering there. Now, if the rule is written such that there's grandfathering, then that's what we would do. So like I say, it depends on what the rule says.
Okay, so a farmer today could hypothetically have to move all of their plants if a rule change to remove it from a buffer zoned area if that was a regulation that came in.
Well, again, this is not a perennial crop. So all the hemp that's in the ground now is going to be ripped out this fall.
Right, but they still
we're
do
gonna
stuff
start
to the
fresh.
ground to get it prepared for it. I mean, they'd have to move it over and re-till the ground where it wasn't before, and they'd lose that space for their current crop. So even though it may be in and out in a year, it still matters. And this is a question, I'm not making this up, right? We get a lot of people asking this exact question, and this is what we're trying to figure out, is that if this is a problem, because I understand the county saying, hey, look, we're waiting to get information back because we don't know what rules we need to put in place, so we didn't put any. But when you get that information back, if that rule doesn't do anything, it's important to know because the people who live next to it are asking, hey, if they finally figure out that this is an odor problem like we're saying it is, what's going to happen? Is it mean they're permanently there and we can't do anything about it? The next time they cycle their crops through, are they forced to move a distance away? And is there any indication that there's, I don't know what those, obviously there's going to be data that comes back, but is there going to be a clear path out of this because you have decided, since the county has decided to say we're not putting any rules, those rules need to be in place, will it actually take care of the problems afterward? And I'm concerned because my understanding, I don't know that it's true that they would necessarily have to move where they have developed the land for growing this. If the rules change, I don't know that they necessarily have to move.
Well, I mean, you can grow all kinds of crops in a piece of land. People put different crops in land all the time.
Uh-huh.
And so, just the fact that they prepared land to grow hemp doesn't mean that it can't, something else
Of course,
can't
they
grow
use it for
there.
something else. I
I
understand.
mean,
that.
in fact, that's actually, if they've grown hemp for a year, then that's a year that it would have been grown under organic conditions. So it makes the land a little bit more valuable if you want to sell it to somebody who wants to transition it to organic, which takes 3 years. Like if you're using conventional pesticides on a piece of land, you have to be clean for 3 years. And so if you grow hemp for one of those seasons, you've added value to the land if your buyer of that land wants to grow organic.
But if that hemp doesn't have to move after a regulation goes in place that says it smells within 100 yards, and that property next door to it is concerned about it, they're not getting an increase in property value. Their property's going through the floor because they're stuck in a situation where the new regulations don't apply. And what we're trying to find out is what we really want to know is that if the county finds out that these problems are going to be there, are they definitely going to be able to mitigate that problem, or are the growers who are currently putting stuff in the ground before those regulations are in place going to be able to continue to grow there, and it's only the new plantings that are going to be subject to those new rules? And I'm not feeling confident from the answer here that I can tell our
Well, yeah,
constituents.
but Andy's pointed out that that's not the ag commissioner's responsibility, but it's an excellent point. But when you say that this is is not a perennial, does that mean that every year when you clean the field and cull the crop or whatever you call it, and glean it, then it starts over fresh?
Yes.
And it could go to anything. So it's not like someone could make the argument, well, we've got these trees that we just put in and it takes 7 years before they fruit, and that's $1 million or whatever.
Right.
So it's a different situation.
It's an annual crop.
Okay, so that's part of the, now we
And the short answer
Yep.
to your question, the board does have the power to make the rule that you're hoping for.
All right.
Okay.
They do.
So
So there could be one bad season if it smells really bad, but then there's something that could be remedied. Is that what you're saying? I said you could have one season where it smelled really awful, and everybody says, we really don't want this next to the school, the church, the neighborhood, and then if the board wants to, then they could take action, and it wouldn't be anybody got prior rights now to do this forever.
Right, they could do
right,
what other
okay.
counties have done and just ban the crop or anything in between.
So Andy, I attended that meeting that you guys had, and I thought it was a great meeting. I thought it was I walked away with a lot of information. And one of those that came up is this discussion right here on the odor. And the fact that a couple of the growers said that there's actually seeds that limit, I guess, what is it, the ferments or the?
Terpenes.
Terpenes. It reduces those, which is where the odor is coming from. So gathering, getting that was like, okay, well, there might be a solution to this fragrance problem.
Right.
The question I have for you is, what was the county doing in preparation for hemp once it was legalized? What did you do in preparation for this crop coming forward? Did you study
the
it?
laws and regs.
Did you think that there might be concerns and issues? And were these residential and school properties and other concerns that are now coming to light, were they thought out originally, or was it new to you when they came to you?
Well, I was aware of I lived most of my life in Santa Barbara, and so when I came back to the county last summer, I was commuting at that time through Carpinteria, and I remember smelling that pot, which is something I hadn't been used to smelling. So I knew from firsthand experience that cannabis can put up a big stink, and I was aware of the the well publicized issues with pesticide drift onto cannabis in Carpinteria as well, between the citrus and the avocado guys nearby. But I guess as far as preparation, I didn't really see. I didn't see a lot of danger ahead that needed anything more than to implement the CDFA's program. The state said this program is open now for registration. Our county said we're not banning the product. From what I could see, the pesticide use on it is going to be much softer and gentler than on almost all crops. So in terms of like a public safety thing, this was starting out a plus. Mm-hmm. So it was not something that I was tremendously worried about the odor thing. I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, real estate values are crash. Now I know some people were thinking that, and I don't think that'll happen. And if that does happen, the board will take action. But I really don't see that. When you look at I don't see like enormous acreages in the Ojai Valley turning to hemp. I don't think it'll be as lucrative a crop as people are talking about, just because now that it's opened up to everybody to grow, and you can grow it in states with much cheaper land, I'm not convinced that there will definitely be a large market in the end for Ventura County grown hemp. But we'll just have to see. This is a brand new crop. I was excited about it. It's interesting to see a new thing come in. This will be a crop which, at least for the big growers, will be harvested with machines. That's new. Almost all of our crops are hand harvested, but at least the biggest couple of growers are going to bring in combines and harvest and chip it in the field and then take it off for processing.
Yep, so much for job security.
Well,
Okay,
it's
do we
looking
have
like
any
the
other
labor in
questions?
these fields is greater than
Okay,
elsewhere.
we'll let you off the hook, Randy. I appreciate the information. Other questions?
Yeah, no, I
Andrea?
just want
Go
to
ahead.
say, I think your attitude toward the crop is great. I think in the years to come, we're going to recognize the benefits outweigh the negatives. Hemp has the potential to clean toxins from the soil. This is an established fact, and we're going to be looking at that because we have a lot of toxic sites in Ventura County and beyond. So I think this is, we're just at the beginning of something new that I think is going to prove to be beneficial in the long run. Thank you very much for
So
coming.
thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Okay, we are now past the appointed time, but we're going to go to public comment. So
It's any more time.
do we have public comment cards? Okay, I've got 10, so that's a
I was trying to tee him up and he's.
30-minute run, and I have, is it Joyce McWilliams? If Joyce is out there, you're up first, and Patty
I'm not sure it's right.
Pagalian? And okay, you're on deck, okay.
I'll keep it short as I can.
Okay,
Thank you
good.
very much for
Thank you.
allowing me to speak about this. In Ojai, we have these planters. They're kind of an extension of a little planter garden with rocks and huge boulders and plants, just simple plants in them, on the corners. There's one on the corner of Blanche and Oak, I believe it is, by the Christian Science Church. Familiar with that area? And when the lights, in the evening, it's very hard to see if you're making a right-hand turn that corner. You can't see that it's out in that area, about 4 feet into the street from the curb. And I made a right-hand turn on that and went over that boulder, and it ruined my ball bearings, and it cost me $600 to repair it. Now, I don't have much of an income. I'm a senior a long time, and I have a limited income. So I had to pay for this, whatever it is supposed to be. Supposedly, I understand it's to help the pedestrians so they can get further out into the street and they can see the cars. But what about the cars that are making the turn on that corner? There's another one on Cañada Street, Cañada and Matilaha. So I'm just saying that that needs to be looked into. It doesn't feel safe, and it's expensive, particularly for a senior to put out $600 at this
Certainly,
time.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've got that, James. Okay. And one thing I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, that we, during public comment for items not on the agenda, we can't do anything other than possibly ask a few questions. There's no action, so it's not ignoring what you've just said. We will refer that to the city manager and follow up on it. Okay, so Patty, you're up, and Sue Williamson, you're on deck.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here. I want to invite you all to a town hall meeting that we're having on September 28th, Saturday, from 3 to 6 at Matilaha Auditorium. And I think I have all sent you the information. You might have already seen it in your emails. But it's going to be a really great gathering. We're going to have some regenerative agriculture experts there. We're going to have Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, who's joining us. And I really hope that you can all make it. It's a very important meeting. There are many people especially in the East End, that have been having a really hard time with all the spraying from the orchard, the situation with the Asian citrus psyllid. And we need to take this seriously. People are having problems breathing, respiratory problems, all sorts of things. So anyway, I'd love to, yes, and kiss the ground. We're going to have
Time
a
for the
clip.
record.
Yeah, the time, the Saturday
the
the
record.
28th of this month. What time is the?
3 to 6.
3 to 6. Okay, thank you.
Until,
We're going to have a preview film clip of the new film Kiss the Ground by Josh and Rebecca Tickell. And Josh has written the book Kiss the Ground, which is a great book.
Great book, highly recommended.
Yes. So if anybody here wants to grab a flyer, I'm happy to hand it out, and I hope the whole town will show up so we
Okay.
can fill the auditorium.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Patty.
thank you.
Right. Okay, Sue, you're up, and we've got Catherine Barron, I think, on deck, if I read that correctly.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm here to reinforce what Patty just said. It's been described to me by a doctor that we're sort of like rain barrels, and at some point our barrel gets full of toxins. And I've lived here 20 years. I've never had a reaction to pesticides as far as I know. I got this horrible throat thing. I went to an ear, nose, and throat, my doctor, blah, blah. They couldn't tell me what it was. It was extremely painful to swallow. I find out that time period is exactly when they were spraying the valley. I called up the commissioner's office. I found out the dates. That's exactly the time that I had this horrible reaction in my throat. And I was very lucky that I know Patty, because she prescribed a homeopathic that actually got rid of all these horrible symptoms I was having. But how many people know that? How many people know when we're being sprayed? We are not even told. People that are living very close are not even informed, and they don't legally have to be informed that they're being sprayed with these poisons. Our valley is toxic. I hate to say this, but it's true. And I've just been very lucky that I have not had reactions. I've sort of thought other people were a little goofy or something until I had it. You know, they say it, you don't understand something until you get it, right? Well, when you get it, good luck. Because doctors don't know what to tell you. They don't even know it's happening. Because we're not informed, and we need to be informed. So this is a really important meeting that we're having, and I really hope that you can get some action here in the city, get your lawyers starting to look into what legal rights do we have to control our air and water, because they saturate the water. Have they tested the aquifers? I don't know. I mean, there's so many issues around this that have been sort of shoved under the ground. And this Asian citrusilla, they can't kill it with the sprays. It didn't work. Florida gave up. They lost their orange crop. They've developed new strains. Oranges are done in this valley. People have to accept that unless they get, and we would like to see the government start to help farmers to either get a better strain that is resistant to this, or get rid of the crop and start new crops. Because we can't live like this. This is really horrible what's going on here.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Right. Okay, Catherine, you're up, and Lanny Coffers on deck.
Hi, so agriculture seems to be a theme tonight. And I also want to support what some people have been saying about pesticides, and I live in the east end of Ojai, and have been exposed to pesticide spraying as well, and had to go to the hospital 3 times in the last 3 months for kidney failure, for lung problems, all kinds of things. And no, the doctors won't tell me it's related to that, but the times that they have been spraying are related. So it is a really important issue, and tied to that, I would like to ask that we reconsider the prohibition on hemp in this town, because if we actually think about that odor that can be a problem, that odor is what makes hemp pest resistant. If hemp was interplanted in the orchards, then you wouldn't need those pesticides. And there are so many more benefits to hemp that I really think we should consider. I don't think we should be shooting ourselves in the foot. Like, hemp matures in as little as 100 days. That means you can harvest it like 3 times a year. Anything that is made from plastic can be made from hemp. It uses about half the water as much as trees do, and would produce 4 times the amount of paper, for instance. There's so many things that can be made from it, and to ban it just seems really, really short-sighted. You can use it to make like concrete reinforcement, textiles, clothing, shoes, handbags, cat litter, potting mix, soil amendment. like skincare products, oil, protein, shampoo, lubricants, oil paint, varnishes. There's the list is endless, and to ban something with so much potential and that could actually be a solution for our pest problem just seems a little absurd to me. And so I really, really hope that those benefits can be considered in the decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lanny, you're up, and Ray Powers, you're on deck.
Thank you.
Howdy.
I want to commend the city of Ojai for taking seriously the creed to think globally and act locally. You've enacted several resolutions regarding worldwide or national issues, some of which might not appear at first glance to directly affect the citizens of Ojai. These include Resolution number 17-45, supporting a ban on offshore oil and gas drilling, Resolution 18-10, declaring the city a nuclear-free zone, and more recently, Resolution number 19-30, endorsing the declaration of a climate emergency. I would respectfully like to propose that the council consider another resolution of far-reaching consequence that does have a direct connection to our city. The City of Ojai website page on cultural resources states, and I quote, "It shall be the overall goal of the city to provide the long-term preservation or proper scientific investigation of all known and potential cultural resources within the Ojai area of interest." No doubt this resolution is intended to protect artifacts and sacred sites unearthed during excavations. But certainly the Chumash people themselves qualify as a cultural human resource, do they not? Ojai is fortunate to have a number of residents of Native American descent, mostly Chumash, including the well-known Tumamite family, who can trace their lineage back to at least 11 known Chumash villages and as far back as the mid-1700s. The Chumash and other indigenous people who are our neighbors today are the very few survivors of what could only be called a genocide, an American Holocaust, that began with the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. California was no exception to this shameful history. In fact, by some accounts, it was the most brutal. Fast forward to 1968, then Governor Ronald Reagan signed a resolution calling for an American Indian Day in California. And subsequently, in 1998, the California Assembly made Native American Day an official state holiday, observed on the fourth Friday in September. A number of states have followed suit with similar holidays on that same day of the year. I would like to see the city of Ojai celebrate, or at least acknowledge, Native American Day on September 27th this month, but I propose that the city go a step further and join the 65 other cities, counties, and states that have used their local authority to enact resolutions declaring that Columbus Day on October 12th be renamed and reinvented as Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't expect this to happen in time for this year, but I hope that the two approaching holidays on September 27th and October 12th will be reminders to move forward with discussing a resolution to be in place before October 12th, 2020. And please let me know what I can do to contribute to this goal.
Okay, thank you, Lanny.
Thank you.
Ray, you're up, and is this Grant? I can't read your last name, but is there a Grant out there? You're on deck. Okay.
Hello, Council. I'm speaking as a resident of Ojai today with a public service announcement. However, first I want to acknowledge Council for agreeing to become an international city of peace. We now have 3 signs as we enter into the valley, and now they say nuclear-free zone as well. And I also want to acknowledge the Council for the recent declaration of climate change emergency. The Ojai International City of Peace team, which is myself and Brian and Lisa Berman, will present the 5th Annual United Nations International Day of Peace Festival in Libby Park on Sunday, September 22nd, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's a free public event in Libby Park around the gazebo. And there's lots of educational speakers. Quite a few of them are in the room tonight. A couple are on the council. And entertainment and inclusive, and it's an inclusive celebration for the entire community. Through the inspiration of local peace builders, we were the 99th United Nations International City of Peace in 2014. Right now, there's 250. So in a few years, it's been growing and growing. This year's theme of the United Nations is Climate Action for Peace. It's the international theme of Peace Day. So it's an urgent call for action in response to the planet's record temperatures, rising sea levels, worst flooding ever recorded, and the most severe wildfires in modern history. As I mentioned recently, because of your vote, we joined the other 850 other cities throughout the world, and I thank you for that in that declaration of climate emergency. So we feel it's very important to understand the connection between peace and our care for the earth and the actions we take to express both. In alignment with the festival intention, we encourage people to walk or ride their bicycles to the event, as it helps reduce our carbon footprint in the community. And to reduce the quantity of paper flyers, we're shooting for a zero waste event. We're asking all the exhibitors just to have one of their brochures or flyers and then have the attendings take a photo of it with their smartphone. Some of the themes the speakers will be addressing are educational foundations of peace in schools, climate change action steps, creating bicycle-friendly city, transitions to renewable energy, protecting our public lands, holistic health, and community peace building. So that's on September 22nd, Sunday, and I hope to see you all there.
Yeah, it starts at 11?
Starts from 11 to 4.
Okay.
Susan will be speaking as well, and I did send you an invitation, Mayor Johnny.
If I'm in town. Thank you. Okay. Grant, you're up, and Akiva, you are next up. Akiva, pardon me. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. I apologize. Yeah. And after you gave me some coaching, I apologize.
My name is Grant Marcus. I'm from Ventura. I'm a homeowner in Ventura. I am a registered nurse, retired registered nurse, and I was also a survivor of the Thomas Fire and first responder. And pardon me, I've had some health problems, so I'll try to get through this.
That's from the speaker.
Why I'm here is I'm what you might call the ghost of the Thomas Fire Christmas past. And I'm here to pass on some lessons that I learned as a city council, what you shouldn't do and what you need to do. The city of Ventura, to cut expenses, stopped having burn days and fire lines in our city. They stopped having the city fire department inspect homes and regulate growth around our homes. As the city of Ventura slacked off in the face of climate change, the residents relaxed too. The city rented out the fire line for $1 a parcel, and people used it to grow gardens and plant shrubs and trees. That growth provided a pathway for the fire to enter our city. Don't do what the city did in Ventura. Have fire inspections, control growth around homes, have fire lines, educate the residents of Ojai that America is 2 degrees hotter today and has a 4.2 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. And because of climate change, our vegetation is drier and like a tinderbox that can blow up any time. Don't buy into the fear of politics like Ventura did. Educate your community about climate change. create fire lines between residential areas and the natural environment whenever possible. It could save homes, it could save lives while preventing the spread of fire. On orange and red alerts, I just want to say, last, please regulate the utility companies. Did you know that utility companies have started 17 of the 21 fires that we've had in California? SCE was responsible for both the Thomas and Woolsey fires. Don't trust your utility company to do the right thing. Don't let them get away with erecting cheap lines and faulty equipment to save money and to throw sparks on a windy day. So,
Okay, we're gonna have to.
okay, and I just want to say one last thing.
Okay, say it.
And that climate change in California means a climate fire is waiting to happen. Do what you can for your community. Love your community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try this again. Akiva, right?
Akiva.
Oh, no, I keep putting.
Akiva.
Akiva, okay.
I would like to trade names with you for a day.
Well, everybody
Just to
calls me
have-
Johnson. It's got
there
a
you
T in
go.
it.
They call me Francine.
And our librarian will tell you how bad I am at this, so it's not personal.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm here tonight to ask that you designate me the new garden coordinator for the Ojai City Demonstration Garden, Community Demonstration Garden. This is the 25th anniversary of me coming to live in Ojai full-time, and I started right away at the Community Demonstration Garden, and this is the time where it really needs some love. I was very happy to find out when I recently returned to Ojai that there was a great buzz of interest in the Community Demonstration Garden, but things have changed in those 6 months, and I'm happy to have discussed tonight with the director of the Green Coalition, Melanie, and have discussed this with a few other people. I've been basically a dedicated organic gardener for over half a century. I was fortunate to have been trained initially by my grandfather of blessed memory, who lived to be 102, and all his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are into gardening. This is also the 25th anniversary of me being a professional garden educator. I started with a 10-week organic gardening series of workshops at the Community Demonstration Garden. Fortunately, the year I arrived, 94, there was already a beautiful demonstration, brand new Ojai Community Demonstration Garden, thanks to now Planning Commissioner Kathy Nolan and a bunch of other people who are now in important positions of power. I also went to the University of Virginia and was a historic guide at Monticello, and I'm going to finish with something that we can all benefit from, and that's a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and I think it applies to everything we're discussing tonight. And basically, I don't have time to read it, and I very much, but I will pass around something from the Community Demonstration Garden. It's not the seeds inside, but it's the box that I found. And there's actually a seed in here that we discussed tonight. And everybody can take some. It happens to be chia. There's also, and I can give it to the constable here to double check. There's sunflower seeds, but the box itself is meaningful. It's a found object from the demonstration garden. And what's written on the box is very important. So I'm going to hand it to Ms.
Okay,
Davis.
hand that to the clerk. Oh,
And all these seeds can
Yeah.
be taken. There's a few seed packets in there as well.
Thank you, Akiva.
Yeah,
Did I get it right that time?
Perfect.
Mayor
Yeah,
Johnson.
Perfect, okay.
Thank
Quick
you, Mayor,
comment?
Bill.
Council.
I would urge you to provide your contact information to the deputy city clerk, because we actually have a council subcommittee of 2 of the council members looking at the community garden.
And
if that would facilitate the communication.
great. My email address is kevinakiva@yahoo.com.
Give it to the,
Write it down.
This
Write
is
it down.
also for the listening audience at home. kevinakiva
Okay.
at yahoo.com. Thanks, everyone.
That was Akiva, okay? Thank you for coming down.
Brought to you by the Ojai City
Okay.
Council.
Mira Love, you are up, and Laura Ward, you're on deck.
I have thoughts about the Climate Emergency Committee, so if you want me to wait.
Yes, that'll be agendized. Okay, thank you. I'll keep that one. Okay, Laura? And Jack Weber's on deck.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Laura Ward at the Ojai Valley News and resident of the city of Ojai. I really did come to speak to the deputy commissioner, which I hoped would still be here, but he's run out, so I'll email him this, what I'll say to you. And that is, I wanted to thank the agricultural commissioner for releasing the Ventura County Crop and Livestock Report, where they listed the county crops in order of their value for 2018. And what I would like to see added in the report, my first request, is the current pesticide use per gallon, per pound associated with producing each crop in our county. And more specifically, the amount in gallons and pounds that have been administered in the Ojai Valley by helicopter spraying and by other methods. Transparency is one of the values that the commission holds on its website, and I am sure that other Valley residents also want the information to evaluate how much each crop is costing us in very real physical and environmental consequences. In Ojai, I'm not even allowed to spill a ray of incandescent bulb light on my neighbor's property, and yet I will not be informed in time to remove my children's toys from the yard or shut the windows when my neighbor's carcinogenic toxins and neurotoxins rain down from the sky upon my family, pets, and plants. My second request is related to the Ag Commission's to 3 of their 5 core values: transparency, respect, and fairness. We need to have 72 hours of public notice before spraying, with the time of day and the exact location of the spraying. And if weather changes, there could be a B plan. They can figure it out. Our town is small enough to know that many of our people have gotten sick and even died from pesticide use used in Ojai Valley farming. And I understand there is a right to farm in our state, but in our United States, there is a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So out of fairness, respect, transparency, I ask the Ag Commission for information on how much poison is being used per acre for each crop type, and to give us significant warning for those 3 East End schools and those at risk so that we may take precautions. If they email a notice to the Ojai Valley News at end of day Wednesday, we'll have it in the print in the paper Friday or on our website immediately at ojaivalleynews.com. And for the people who didn't catch that, that's www.ojaivalleynews.com. Thank you for your consideration.
So-
I think we have a question here for you.
Yes.
Laura, quickly, you're reading something to the county, so I'm not sure if
I know, I
if
thought
any
he'd
county
be here.
officials watching our meeting, God bless them if they are.
I'll email him.
The second thing is, I was going to ask you, is that something that you would like us to do? Request the council to actually propagate this letter and send it from the city of Ojai?
Yes, please. I think it would bear so much more weight if you would ask
Get-
him
get
for
a
these
draft to us.
2 simple things. So
decide that
I'll send this to you, and then you could put it on the agenda for next time.
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I have
Thank
the
you.
contact information if you'd like his card.
He gave me his
Oh,
card.
yeah.
I told him
Okay,
I
I'll
was
give
here
this
to
one
talk to
Bill.
him, so he made sure to
okay.
get out. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Well, gee, thanks, John.
Thank
Yeah, right. Well, or maybe we should give it to Randy.
No,
He's volunteering
I'll-
us here.
Randy and I'll run with it.
Okay, Jack, are you out there? Yeah, come on down.
Hi, council members. I wasn't going to speak on these issues during public comments tonight, but I was inspired listening to everybody else. So as there's a common theme tonight about agriculture, there's also a much more pervasive common theme of psychology. And I just want to try to tie together three things tonight, three issues that seem separate but are actually connected. One is the pesticide issue, the other is the hemp issue, the other is climate emergency, and they're all interrelated. To begin, I also produced a letter. I sent that to the Ventura Ag Commissioner and to Mr. Caldwell. And I was exposed to pesticides on the farm that I was living at, and I suffered health consequences as well. I've been in treatment for that the last 3 months. Thankfully, I'm getting better. So if you want a comprehensive letter as well, I wrote one, and I also published it online and in a letter to the editor in the Ojai Valley News. So so much of the conversation here tonight, I was just really struck and a bit mortified, honestly, with the conversation about the odor with hemp. We have so many other problems to worry about, and the benefits of hemp far outweigh the possible odor that might occur. Those odors, I'm glad it came up, are actually terpenes, right? Terpenes are the basis of why forest bathing are so helpful for us. When we go out into the mountains here hiking, we're bathed in terpenes. Terpenes are beneficial for us, but we have the psychology of being like, oh, hemp is related to marijuana and this is bad and it's a stigma. And I think a lot of what needs to happen with climate emergency and enacting the policies that we really need to address climate emergency pervasively and substantially involve changing our mindset. And I've mentioned this in the past months here, coming up here, speaking about climate emergency, and we have to step outside the box of how we've been thinking and try to understand what our priorities are. And the example I just gave of the smell and the odor with hemp versus the other terpenes that are in the air and the health benefits they have is exemplary of how we need to just rewire ourselves to actually step forward and make progress and save our future. So I have 26 seconds left. So pesticides fit into the same thing. Pesticides need to go. Pests in a peer-reviewed study, big study released earlier this year, pesticides were the second cause behind the insect apocalypse. So the insect apocalypse was intimately related to climate collapse. So we need to see how these things interweave, and a lot of it is because how we perceive things. So understanding the urgency of climate crisis should propel us to change our minds about these things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jack. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment section now. We've gone through the cards that were submitted on time, and we will go to the next item, which is what, item number 2?
Have we done the consent
Oh,
calendar?
oh, no, I haven't, yes.
I will move
Okay.
approval of the consent calendar,
wanna-
items A through H.
I want to pull item G.
Okay.
I'll second the first motion.
Okay, and item G will be pulled for discussion, is that?
Yeah, I just want
Okay.
to.
Okay, so I've got a motion to approve the consent calendar.
A through F and H.
Okay, and any objection to, okay, hearing none, so ordered. Now we'll go to, what is it, G?
Item G, okay.
Okay.
So for the benefit of the audience, item G is the adoption of an ordinance of the city council to prohibit industrial hemp cultivation within the city. And I was the only council member at the time that opposed that. I suggested a moratorium similar to what the county is doing so that we can look at it, because I recognize the many benefits of hemp. So I know it's a little bit of a long shot, but perhaps I did write an editorial about it, and perhaps after you've done your own research in the last 2 weeks and you've heard the comments from Catherine Barron and Jack Weber, perhaps this council would like to reconsider, rather than having a ban or a prohibition, that you would consider instead a moratorium, so that we can look at it and have we need time to look at something that is so new rather than outright ban something that we really don't fully understand, a plant that we don't fully understand. So that's why I pulled it. So I just wait
Okay.
with bated breath.
Okay. So you have a motion?
My
and a-
motion is to, and City Attorney, you might need to guide me. I don't know if we can simply amend it, or then we go back to the beginning like we did when we pulled the cannabis ordinance multiple times. We had to start over. So my motion is, so can I simply make a motion to amend the word prohibition to moratorium, or how do I do that?
That would be, shifting it from prohibition to moratorium would be a change that would have to be reintroduced. You could amend the effective date to be, add an auto expiration clause, although even that should still come back for reintroduction. The rule is that minor, non-substantive changes can be made, but something is converting from a prohibition to a moratorium is substantive.
And that was voted down at the last meeting.
Yes, but.
Sunset clause was
Yeah,
voted
but other
down,
things
as I
were
said.
voted down and reconsidered.
Yeah, well, that
So
was
it's not
extreme-
out of the
doesn't-
ordinary to ask
Right,
for
right.
reconsideration, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay,
So-
is there a second to that?
Okay, my motion dies.
Okay, hearing none.
Dies for lack of a second.
Okay, and for the benefit
All I
of,
can do is plant a hemp seed.
for the benefit of the audience who is unfamiliar with the municipal boundaries, from public comment, I think there are some confusion. The Ojai Valley is not the city of Ojai. We are 4.32 square miles, almost completely built out, and we don't have agricultural fields in the city, but we have had people growing the plants where I know that we have bigger problems than odor, but if you live in a neighborhood where you're close to your neighbors, the skunk, what do they call it, skunk weed, or the smell is pretty pungent and very unpleasant. It can go 6 to 8 weeks. And so there isn't any commercial reason to do it in the city, and we're not prohibiting, we don't have any authority outside the city. So for folks who are concerned about that, that's an issue for the County Board of Supervisors. That's just to allay, and we can always repeal an ordinance after the, maybe we'll find that they've got breeds, or what do you call it, varieties, or what, that have no odor, or have limited odor, and that'll be great. In which case, nobody would even know it was growing in somebody's backyard and wouldn't care. So we are not the epicenter for the, the crop, so, anyway.
So I'll move to approve, G.
Okay.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. You want a roll call on it, or you want to?
I'm not going to vote for it.
I know you're not. I just wanted to know if you wanted a roll call on it. Okay, well, go ahead, since it's not by acclamation, okay.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
No.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes. Yes.
And one of my reasons for no is because it helps to clean the soil.
Right.
Okay, and there are toxic yards within the city. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's hope that day comes, so we can do
Yes,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
okay, very good. That now takes us to item number 2. And that is the formation of a climate emergency mobilization.
This is probably going to take a little bit. We had do you think it's I'll, up to the rest of the council, take maybe a 3-minute break before we move on to this item.
Okay,
And then I think we should get to the public comment as soon as possible.
We just,
okay, well, 3 minutes, yeah, okay. You want,
didn't we just finish public comment?
No, for this item.
okay, I'm gonna, if there's no,
3 minutes.
okay, 3 minutes, run. We're going to call the meeting back to order, so if everybody will take their seats, I appreciate it. Okay, I'm calling the meeting back to order. Please, everybody take your seats in the cross conversation here. Okay, I think everybody's... Okay, do we have enough agendas out there, Gail? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, item number 2, Mr. City Manager, would you kick us off on that?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I have just a quick staff report on this. On July 22nd, 2019, the City of Ojai adopted a resolution endorsing a declaration of a climate emergency, as many people in the audience have mentioned. One of the terms of the resolution was that the city would create a climate emergency mobilization committee to, quote, present high priority strategies to achieve emission reductions at emergency speed. So we have adopted the resolution enacting that, but we did not talk about specifics of who was to be on the committee, how it would be formed, what the different protocols and procedures would be. So we have placed this item on the agenda to allow for that discussion. And we have made some recommendations as far as using that committee to review climate-related requests and prioritize those requests to be returned to the City Council for enactment in the future. So with that, that's the staff report.
Okay, are there any questions of staff? I have, no? Okay. I have a great number of cards here with a single topic, so I think we will, it'll be at 2 minutes, and if you're just saying ditto, that's good too. And if it's something more complex, maybe we can cheat a little on the time. So let's start. I've got Ray Powers, the ubiquitous Ray Powers, you're up. And I got Melanie Larkin on deck. I don't know, Melanie may have left already, I don't see her. Did she? Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Council. I wish we were taking the public comment after your discussion, because I'm probably going to have more questions and thoughts after you guys discuss this subject.
Okay, it's not a workshop tonight, so
No, I
you
get
can
it.
express your position and we'll...
Well, I get it. So first of all, thank you again for making the declaration of emergency climate action. Thank you for being willing to be more proactive and creating a mobilization committee. I think is very important. I do want to say, as I read the staff report, and this is no reflection on current staff, but where it said that staff has become aware of a sustainability committee of the Planning Commission, that I'm on that commission, and it's been around for 3 years, and the original sustainability roadmap was created in 2008. So that's all to say I'm very, very happy that you're willing to focus on this now. You're willing to create a committee out of not only people that are already working with the city, but culling from the amazing brain trust, hopefully, that we have in our community. We have brilliant minds. We have experts in this community that can help with this. To take the idealism and take the concepts into proactive action, so we can actually create some procedures, some policies, and some on-the-ground boots projects that will set the tone for what Ojai might be 50 years from now and 100 years from now. So I just want to thank you for that. I'm all for this committee being formed. I think you all know that. Councilwoman Francine and Councilman Wyrick have some documents that Kathy Nolan and I provided for them about the Sustainability and Resilience Ad Hoc Committee of the Planning Commission, and some of our thoughts on the structures that the Mobilization Committee could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And Melanie has not come back?
No, can I just say what she had
Okay. Kathy Nolan, you are up, and Dee Reed on deck.
probably won't take the full 3 minutes. I'm here tonight as a planning commissioner, and as Commissioner Powers mentioned, Ray and myself have been on a sustainability committee that has kind of not been fully active as of recently, but I want to commend you on this declaration. And I also wanted to reiterate that to the best that we can, as planning commissioners, I'm willing to participate, not only participate if that worked out, but actually to do any work that would be required to make this happen. I also understand the urgency of this committee, but at the same time, due to the climate change and what's going on the planet. But I also would say, urge you to take your time to make sure that it gets formed and structured and the right people are on it so that it's successful and that we have the opportunity to make it work and really have action come through. And another thing I wanted to point out with this, of course this is happening globally and we're this small city or this small community here, but I think that everything that we do counts, and we also have the opportunity to take what we do and share it with others. And I think that's a real important factor to keep in mind. And I also wanted to mention about the selection of who's going to be on this committee or how it's structured, that you really reach out to the community and look for people that have knowledge, skills, experience, and expertise, and go to the people that really have a good track record as far as getting things done. And another item you might want to discuss or look at is the possibility of having an advisory board, because there is there's a lot of people in this community, once again, that have a lot of experience that may not want to actually sit on the committee, but may be available for advice in all different avenues. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Dee, you are up, and Chris Young, you're on deck.
Hi, I'm Dee Reed. I live in Ojai. I want to thank you all so much for declaring a climate emergency. It's really important, and it really is an emergency, and for agreeing to appoint this committee. The good news is that we're not alone. Over 800 communities around the world are already actively doing this. They've rolled up their sleeves. They've gotten to work because they, like you, believe that we have the resources to address climate change. But we need bold leadership at every level, starting at the town hall. I believe some of the most important work can be done locally in municipalities. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we do need to get up to speed on what kinds of policies we can adopt to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions measurably and mitigate carbon at the local level. Policies that make sense for Ojai, for our community. I've been tracking what other cities have been doing around the world, and it's comforting and inspiring to see what is possible with bold leadership. That's the missing ingredient where it's not happening. I think we have bold leadership here. That's why you've done this. I believe also that Ojai could become a model of what a green small town can do in this regard. So let's get to work quickly, efficiently, and transparently as possible. I have a couple of thoughts on the formation of the committee. I see it as an advisory committee, a citizens advisory committee. It should be composed primarily of local residents who have been actively studying climate change and practical solutions. It should not be too large, 7 to 9 people, enough to get a quorum and enough to get something, small enough to get something done. But it should be a public body. If it's appointed by the council, it should behave as a public body, and the position should be filled in a publicly transparent fashion, which I'm sure you're going to do. Advertise the positions, describe the memberships, what you're looking for, what the selection criteria are, have an application form and a process that people can complete quickly and get it to you. Don't take forever to review it, but take enough time to look into the community and really reach out to people in the community. The committee, I would say the committee would choose its own chair, but they should have a staff liaison. Somebody in your staff, could be in the planning department, I imagine, that would come to the meetings and serve as a resource to the committee. The goal in my mind is to produce substantive, practical recommendations that would be helpful to the city and to the planning board as you go about updating your general plans and ordinances to be responsive to the climate emergency. You're going to have to come up with policies and ordinances. So, let's get going. We've gotten off to a good start with 100% electricity, but we may have to look at our buildings, we may have to look at our transportation, or we may have to look at other land uses.
Dee, I'm going to have to ask you to wind it up. We got,
I look forward to getting this process underway and to helping in any way I can.
okay, thank you. Chris Young, you're up. Michelle Ellison, you're on deck.
Hello, folks, friends. I actually came out tonight because it was worth it to me to come here and stand in front of you and say ditto to almost everything that's been said. I'll add two other things to that very quickly. One is, you see, I'm all about ditto right here. You see this? Double climate change right there. And then the final thing is to indeed thank you so very much. This does seem remarkable to me where we are at this point, where you folks have helped us get to in terms of proclaiming a climate emergency and now this formation. So thank you all very, very much. I think we're headed in the right direction, and I think it's blatantly clear we are not too early on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Michelle, you're up, and is this Catherine Barron? Am I reading that correctly? You're on deck.
Oopsies. Good evening. I'm Michelle Ellison, a resident of Ojai. I appreciate that this council acknowledges the seriousness of our climate crisis and is willing to take action to mitigate further damage. Ojai has already made notable progress and demonstrated climate leadership, like passing the We're with Paris climate agreement and joining Clean Power Alliance, empowering our city with 100% clean, renewable energy, and electrifying the city's landscaping equipment. So we've really made a lot of tremendous progress. But of course, our job is not done. There's plenty more we can do and should do to draw down emissions. We should set a target date for Ojai by which we will be carbon-free or carbon neutral. And I think we should make it no later than 2025, which is achievable considering what we've already accomplished. This is where I see a Climate Emergency Mobilization Committee playing an instrumental role. Set an ambitious goal, and then identify, research, and prioritize specific opportunities to reduce and sequester carbon emissions in areas such as buildings, transportation, energy, materials, waste, water, land use, etc. It should be action-oriented, results-driven, and efficient. Given that the climate crisis isn't going to be resolved anytime in the near future, I think this committee will have a longer-term role to play, and it could provide guidance for climate components in the upcoming general plan update. Our community has so many knowledgeable, skilled, and committed individuals working on the climate crisis, so my hope is that the committee would be composed of many said public servants and representatives from various local environmental organizations, similar to what Dee had said about a climate citizens advisory committee of sorts. And this has also kind of been echoed sentiment. While Ojai is a small town, we do have a big influence and reach. Others look to what we do. So if we choose to be on the forefront of climate action, others will surely follow, and our actions will have exponential benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Catherine, you are up, and Russell Sidney is on deck.
Hello again. I was born in Santa Barbara, and I've lived in Ojai as long as I can remember, but I am still new to this land. Most of us are. My family are immigrants, and I imagine many of us here identify as being from somewhere else. I think it is really important to acknowledge that long before many of our families were here, this land was cared for and inhabited by the Barbareño-Ventureño band of Chumash people. We are now clearly facing the consequences of exploiting the land and oppressing the indigenous culture that protects bioregional wisdom and practices and promotes a more mutual relationship between humans and the earth. Lake Casitas and the Ojai Valley Inn were both built on former sites of Chumash villages that were violently displaced and forced to live on reservations that were only taken away a few years later. Our society has been terribly destructive to indigenous heritage, but that doesn't mean that their culture is not present and in fact essential today in the formation of this climate committee. Chumash families in this area are currently trying to gain federal recognition that would enable the return of land to indigenous care. To quote the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, to Native Americans, sovereignty is not possession of the land, nor power or control over it. Simply put, sovereignty is the living relationship between the people and the land they live on. National Geographic magazine recently pointed out that indigenous people protect the territories of 80% of Earth's remaining biodiversity. Beyond GDP, beyond economic growth, we must recognize that the diversity of life is of paramount importance and value to our standard of life on this planet. So we must breathe life into our obligations to these communities and treaties that recognize their sovereignty. I urge the City Council to consider this in forming a Citizens Climate Assembly. Our efforts to protect our community from climate catastrophes would be well advised to include the knowledge of those who've inhabited this land first. So please include a space, at least on the committee, for a local Chumash family member, as well as take careful consideration of how the Climate Committee's composition can be best representative of the diverse communities that make Ojai so unique. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Russell, you're up, and Jack Weber's on deck.
Thank you, council members. Russell Sidney. I'm a trained scientist in agricultural, biological, and related environmental sciences, as well as in international development. I've worked for 8 years with farmers to help create local food supplies, 15 years of experience working to mitigate the use of fossil fuels. James Vega is correct that this city probably does not have the resources to create an effective long-term Climate Emergency Mobilization Committee, and yet it is essential the city does just that. The committee will have an overwhelming scope of work for at least the next 20 years. For that reason, my suggestion is that you start with an ad hoc committee tasked to do 2 things. 1, get the funding in place to create the needed committee and to create an implementation program to handle climate change mitigation and adaptation. Secondly, establish the necessary partners with all who need to deal with the unfolding climate emergency, not just in the city, but in the entire valley and watershed. Climate change and the consequences do not care about city limits. The climate crisis is on track to create more extreme weather and storms, more faster, hotter, stronger wildfires, more disruptions to our agricultural and food supply, more economic uncertainty, more overwhelming costs to the government. That's a lot to deal with. Having worked to bring change to California agriculture, I can tell you it can be done, but it takes time. Having worked to try to get this valley to mitigate and adapt to the climate crisis, I can tell you it takes too much time, and that needs to change quickly. A strong, long-term emergency mobilization committee may be the only thing that will get all of this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Jack, you're up, and Chris Wallen, you're on deck.
Can I give these to the clerk to pass out to you?
Sure.
Good evening. My primary concern in choosing members for the Climate Emergency Mobilization Committee is to appoint those who understand the direness of our situation. This effort can't be a posturing. We need radical action to save our future. Ojai's small contribution towards reducing emissions won't dent the global problem. But let's be smarter than this. Ojai's tininess is akin to the tininess of climate activist hero Greta Thunberg. Greta just sailed from Europe to the US in a sailboat. She didn't do this because she believes one carbonless journey would make a dent in the global climate crisis. She did it because she knows the world is watching. If Ojai takes unprecedented steps towards becoming an ultra-regenerative city, the world will notice. In other words, our smallness is precisely what gives us the huge opportunity to make sweeping changes and be hugely successful as a model for others. Just as I and others have the courage to stick out our necks for our community, so must you stand up to make Ojai a global forerunner, to keep pace with what climate science tells us. Short of this, we will suffer immeasurably and will burn in hell for our hubris. What I've passed out to you are my general and some specific suggestions for sweeping changes that need to happen. I don't have time to mention them here in my 10 seconds left, so I copied that for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Chris, you're up.
Mr. Mayor,
What?
may I request, Jack, may I request that you also send us a copy online, through via email, and have Louise distribute it? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Chris is up, and Deborah Pendry, you're on deck.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for the platform, and again, thank you for the Mobilization Committee. I will take notes from my colleagues here. Next time I'll have a prepared statement so I can sound more eloquent and articulate a little bit better with my 3 minutes, actually my minute 44. I would say what I'd like to do is, rather than sort of designate types of members that should be on, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but I would like to make the suggestion that we really look at data and the communication and not do this all in a vacuum. I think we have an enormous opportunity to leverage this platform, this Mobilization Committee, and no disrespect to the Sustainability Committee, but the fact that that's been going on for a couple of years, and I work in the Sustainability Committee, and I didn't know that. And I'm not sure what the agenda, the initiatives are. And, that's something that we need to take into consideration. So I would suggest maybe an idea is creating a climate emergency index. Right now we have a little index on the Ojai Valley News where we track the Lake Casitas water levels. And, maybe it's impactful for some folks and maybe it's not. Some folks would tell you that Lake Casitas really isn't what we should be looking at. It's really the groundwater basin that we should be tracking. So with that, we have an opportunity to really communicate transparent objectives, measurements, and goal achievement, which people then can communicate to their peers and their family. And then we have a viral communication campaign happening with folks outside of our city. Yes, we're small, we're agile, but again, a resilient community will be worth more in the future than a non-resilient community. So that's our opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Deborah, you're up, and Steve Colome is.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson, council members. So we have a question of whether to have an ad hoc committee or a standing committee in the city report. It's a crazy amount of bureaucracy for that, establishing a standing committee, but nor should the council consider an ad hoc committee. Our global and local climate emergency is not one issue with any clear goal accomplished. It's not possible. That said, Mr. Vega's final recommendation of starting with an ad hoc committee to get started and determine how to proceed with a permanent committee seems the best scenario, keeping in mind the emergency part of the city's resolution. While the above is happening, I'd like to remind the council of low-hanging fruit actions it can take on the cheap starting about 3 months ago. Not naming any names, but as of a few months ago, you now have on staff a person with expertise in energy efficiency, building performance, and photovoltaic systems. The city reducing its energy demand and then offsetting it with renewable energy will go a long way in community buy-in, walking the talk, as it were. And the county offers us a lot of resources and support, and already having taken a lot of steps to reduce its greenhouse gases footprint. And Supervisor Bennett loves the Ojai Valley. Finally, in reading Mr. Vega's concern over staff time.
Wow. You got promoted again.
It's coming. Okay, so he was very concerned over staff time, and rightly so, because I know you're stretched thin. But a reminder of something I've been saying at this podium for over 10 years now. With the constructs of our existing economic system, we always ask, how much is this going to cost? But in the necessary paradigm shift needed on all levels, the question is, how much is this going to cost if we don't? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Steve, you're up, and Myra, Love, you're on deck.
Steve Colome here. What I'd like to address is what I see as a potential timing advantage for the city in establishing this committee. I don't know where we are in terms of the process of the general plan update, but we're going to be doing that at some point. And the Office of Planning and Research for the state is requiring climate policies, if not a climate action plan, as part of that general plan update. We can, run into that headlong, I think, and I'm hoping, I'm going to embarrass the county of Ventura. like the County of Ventura has done, and they have come up with an extraordinarily weak draft climate action plan. In contrast, the County of Los Angeles put together a committee ahead of time, hired a very good staff person, and hired faculty from UCLA and a strong engineering team. And they voted 5-0 on August 6th to adopt a sustainability plan, which is very forward-thinking, 10 times better than what the draft Ventura County plan is. So what I would encourage you to do is establish a committee. I think it can be an ad hoc committee that will help to set in place what the city would be doing as part of its climate action plan incorporated into the general plan update.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Mr. Comey, a real quick question?
Yes, sure.
Can you get in 30 seconds or less, did the county, anything happen of note at the county today, at the hearing for the general plan?
Well, there were several items of note. I was out of town, so I was seeing things by email. There was a very interesting vote on antiquated CUPs. The county council had gone to outside counsel and found that they really should not be approving new projects on antiquated CUPs without careful environmental review. A major.
They voted for that.
And
advised to vote to go forward. There was a yes to do that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There were a couple of others, but
Thank you.
you'll get reports on that, I'm sure.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, Myra?
Exactly.
Hi, it's Mira.
Oh, Mira, okay.
No worries.
Thanks.
So grateful that you all have declared the climate emergency. And I just want to highlight tonight one particular area because people have said so many wonderful things, and I agree with almost everything that's been said. And one thing that I think would be useful to assist in unifying the community, in igniting the will to transform, because what we have to do is get as many citizens on board as possible and ignite them, inspire them to actually be able to transform their lifestyles as quickly as possible. And so in order to do that, in order to build a visible culture of climate awareness, I really suggest that the committee, whatever committee is put together, as quickly as possible, mobilize groups of citizens in neighborhoods. So we have neighborhood groups mobilized as quickly as possible to make, and when I say visible culture of awareness, I mean visibility quite literally. Like, let's get signs, posters, banners going in every neighborhood throughout the town so that we're providing a continual reminder of the values that we're trying to cultivate as a city. So when people enter the town, instead of seeing Welcome Ojai, maybe they see Welcome to Ojai fossil fuel free by 2025. You know, and that sets something in their mind, and then they see more and more posters of that. Drive more slowly, drive less, walk more, can you bike, question mark, et cetera, right? And lastly, I'll just say I once heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama was interviewed, and he was asked, what is the number one thing that can be done to raise the consciousness of a city? And he said, more festivals. More holidays, more holy days, right? And so I love that the Peace Festival is happening, but could we have monthly festivals that would help our culture of climate awareness, that would give people a chance to participate in a role other than consumer? Because at the moment, our communal city rituals, our city holy days, our city holidays, the parades, Ojai Day, Earth Day, they're all commerce-driven and fossil fuel-driven, unfortunately. No matter what the intent is, that is the message. Like my son said when he came to Earth Day, and he said, oh, Earth Day is a place where you can buy me a toy, because he's watching the street vendors, right? So can we create these festivals that nurture the message that this council has sent by declaring climate emergency? And can we, again, mobilize a larger base of citizens quickly and boldly, and not just let that committee be 7 to 9 people and we don't hear from them for 2 years? So that's sort of the short of what I have.
Okay,
Thank
you. Mira. I appreciate it. Okay, Erica, is there Erica Ramirez? Is that, if I'm reading that right? Yeah. She's in the back. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm actually an Oakview resident, newly moved from Ventura, but I've grown up here, so.
There are several of you in the room, so you're amongst friends.
So, thank you very much
We'll
for
vote opposed.
passing this emergency declaration. Climate change has been something that's very, for lack of a better expression, near and dear to me for a very long time. I spend a lot of my time thinking about what I can do about it, and I came here to express something that I hope that you'll consider, or at least the committee will consider, that I think gets overlooked when we talk about planning for a fossil-free future, which is community resiliency. We have to plan for the fact that we are actually going to see at this point consequences of global warming. We already are seeing consequences, and it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. It's good that we're taking steps to try to mitigate the damage, but at this point, energy use continues to rise, while fossil fuel use also continues to go up. So the little steps we take, everything counts, but the simple fact is the world is not going to meet the Paris Agreement 2-degree limitation in warming. And so I think it's important for any committee that's formed to plan into their climate plan resiliency plans, such as things that have been mentioned, creating fire zones around houses, maybe changing building materials in houses, looking to, changing maybe roofing materials, eaves, where, during the fires, the embers got in eaves. So there's lots of little things that get overlooked that could help in the long run to create a more resilient town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that is the last card I have on this, so we'll now take it,
Can I speak to this just for a minute? There weren't any blue cards left.
okay, come on down. Is it Grant?
Yeah, Grant Marcus.
Yeah.
I just want to say I want to take all these people home with me to Ventura. Maybe Ventura will learn something. We've got to act. We've got to act now. The only question about climate change is, are we too late? That's the question. And I want to leave you with something that Edward Morrow said when he went up against McCarthyism. He said that a nation of sheep begets a government of wolves.
Wow.
Do you understand that?
Yep.
And what I think he was also saying was that we need to act differently than what we see the establishment acting like. We need to take the lead. It's not the president that leads the nation. It's the small guy. It's the little city that leads the nation. So I'm just so glad that you decided to declare an emergency, and I hope this spreads to each city in our county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Grant. Okay. Back to the council for some deliberation.
Yeah.
Who would like to start?
God, everyone's looking my way.
No.
It'd be the first time you didn't start, Bill.
He always looks to the right.
Well, I'll be happy to offer thoughts, but go ahead. I think, well, okay, I'll start. If no one else wants to.
Surprise, yes.
First of all, I think, to me, the most important thing to do is to look at this as something of a two-step process, where we first put together a group to look at what the staff report mentions is establish a community charter or mission statement. I don't think we should try to figure that out tonight. I think that should be delegated to a small initial group with a time-certain report back to this council for us then to accept or not accept, and hopefully endorse that report. And by time certain, I mean real quick, a couple months at the most. I also think it should be small. I think the number 7 was good, maybe even smaller for the initial group. And it's important to have that group reflect the sensibilities of council to not waste time. All right. And I also, in other words, we're not talking about the long term, we're talking about just getting it set up, I think, needs to come back to us with a time-certain report. And I also think, to me, the most important thing to do is to focus on what we can do that matters, either within our jurisdiction or in terms of igniting or stimulating change in the other cities and in the county. In other words, I'm not interested in window dressing. I'm interested in things that we can do that could spread, that make sense. Things like, small engines and things like that we could prohibit. So anyway, those are my initial thoughts.
Can I have a question?
I just.
Okay, Susan?
Could you just clarify something you said? You're considering or asking us to, you're asking us to consider an initial small committee.
Small ad hoc group that would define the mission and.
That would define a mission.
And come back to us for that report.
Well, if we go that route, I would suggest that we have that by the next meeting. I don't see why
You think 2
something
weeks
like
is-
that, sure.
Oh, well.
As a writer, I can, are you suggesting that the council select 2 council members?
No, I think we
Or-
should.
and then-
I'm not necessarily suggesting that at all.
But what are you suggesting?
That we designate in some fashion a small group to come back with us with the first job, which is to establish a committee charter and mission statement and a suggested structure for moving forward. And we do
Okay.
that quickly. I'm not sure 2 weeks is enough, but
Okay,
I
well,
don't want it
no,
to be
well,
6 months either.
2 weeks is not enough if it involves, but who does the appointing?
Well, I think we should.
Okay, so we're going to appoint 2 council members and then 3 members of the public? Or
Not
something
necessarily.
like that? Or,
Not necessarily.
okay, so that's
I can think of a
something-
lot of people a lot more qualified than me to talk about this.
Yes, I agree with
So
that.
I don't think I necessarily.
No, I'm speaking, I didn't mean it like that. I also feel there are people more qualified than myself.
Right.
I'm well aware of that. So not just, more qualified than all of us sitting here at the dais.
Main thing
what
is
I
I'm
mean.
looking at this
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a first step, but a quick step.
Yeah.
And we don't try to figure it all out tonight.
Okay, all right, well, I think that sounds like a good possibility. I wanted to present some other ideas, and I'm also comfortable with the very last choice, if we can't make up our mind, which would be the ad hoc committee to be created to determine how it wishes to proceed.
And that's what I was thinking. The initial would be ad hoc, and it would come back to the report, too.
Oh, so
Okay, let's hear-
that's what you're looking at,
Okay,
yeah.
let's,
Or do you want to keep discussing?
No, go
I don't have any
Just a
questions.
second.
Yeah.
I know Randy has a
Gets to
bunch. I
talk.
just didn't know if it would be beneficial if there was a motion, that's all.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay, well, okay.
Well, first of all, clarify why I see it going this way is all the comments that I heard tonight were about the right people selecting, selection process, knowledgeable skills, advisory board, local residents, small enough to communicate, transparent, public process, staff liaison, and then, more importantly, was a Native American Indian aspect to it, which I thought was interesting, because I don't think any of us had thought about that. Personally, I see the, also short-term, long-term. I think that this is not a short-term problem. I don't think that we're going to have any success in 6 months or even 6 years actually identifying, changing the community that the majority in this room see coming. So my sense is that we would want to form a commission, an actual commission that reports back to council. I think I'd like to see that commission appointed by having an individual person appointed by each council person to that committee or to that commission. And through the commission process, they can form as many ad hoc or as many advisory boards or as many entities that they would like to create to give them and provide them sound information. So that way we're not limiting it to 5 people, we're limiting it to 5 people actually reporting back to the governing body, and in turn have the opportunity to interact with the entire community and to have full conversations and full transparency And even as far as the woman who spoke last about creating, your community groups and actually, interacting in specific areas and educating and gathering even more information. So that's my sense. So my proposal would be to create, and I'll use the words from this, the recommendation is that we create a Climate Emergency Mobilization Commission, that each council person appoint one person to it initially, that we have that, once that commission is appointed, that we have that commission actually write their mission statement and actually come back and present it publicly to council, and also let that commission form their own, select their own chair, their vice chair, and I feel that's the best way for us to go with this.
And would there be a time certain report back on a charter or mission statement to us?
Yes, I'd like to see that. I think that could come back easily within 2 months.
Okay.
So that's my motion. If I can have a second, we can have a further in-depth conversation.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I have a question about your recommendation that each council member picks one person. What is your thinking, your thought process for that?
Well, first of all, each one of us talks to the community in a different way, in a different manner, and at different times, and at different locations. And I think all of us know someone or have engaged with someone who has a skill set that will enhance this climate change resiliency and process. And that's why I'm thinking that's one thing that each of us would know that. The other thing is each of us would bring in someone different, someone new to the process. I have no problem with someone who sat on a commission or someone who comes and attends all these meetings on a regular basis. But I think that there's people out there that don't engage, that are just as smart and bring just as much to the table. They just don't have the time, or they haven't made the time. So I see that as another benefit, is again, more faces, different energy, and more uniqueness.
Well, I can see that perspective, but I would say that there are people in the community who've been actively involved in climate resilience, either a board or a committee or not a government committee, or, they have engaged for several years actively, and my thinking would be to pick representatives from those committees because they have the background. My concern is that if we don't, that perhaps I see some benefit to your idea, but I would like to establish criteria that as we do for any other commission. For the Arts Commission, the person has a background in art. So I think there has to be criteria how we pick these. And I think we would need to discuss amongst ourselves because we want to have people that work together. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I have to mull it over a little bit. But those are just my off the top. Can I tell you my ideas or
Well,
are
you're
we
going to
going to vote?
amend,
Are
we have a motion.
We have a motion, okay.
And you can amend it if you like, or if there's,
Well, it's a completely different
yeah,
idea.
right, it may be a substitute motion,
Yeah,
but I don't,
substitute motion.
Ryan, you?
Yeah, well,
I like the idea of a commission. I really like that, actually. Yeah, and they, sorry, I just wanted to finish, okay.
The problem, I think this is a good idea. I think we should do it. I just don't agree with the commission. Commissions eat up so much staff time. They require a lot more energy from the staff. When this isn't something that needs the guidance in the same way that the Planning Commission, Historic does, it's not the same level of what they need to do. They're going to figure out what I would think are a bundle of ideas that we are constantly bombarded with here. I mean, let's be honest, this is Ojai. We don't have a shortage of incredible, great ideas about how to fix climate change that come through the door here. We are very receptive to them, and most of the time, we're willing to adopt pretty much almost all of them that come through the door. But what would be nice is to have a body of, that I believe should be an ad hoc committee of some sort, that can vet those ideas and bring them to us on a sporadic basis, whatever is the right timeline for them to come in. And they've been vetted by an outside committee, so we aren't bogged down in our council meetings trying to figure out what the best moves to make are. That, I think, would be a really positive thing for this community. So as a council, we have a group we can go to who can kind of give us a recommendation, and then we can also not be bogged down in the specifics, but have some recommendations on how to implement those. I just don't see a commission as being necessary. If we can form it with the same people, save some money, save some staff time, and not have it be a headache for them, I think then that committee is going to have a lot more viability and a lot more strength in the recommendations they make, because we're not going to be concerned about how it's taking away from other aspects of the city. And if anything knows anything about this city, not only are we very responsive to climate change, but we do not have the world's largest staff, and they are not full of free time that they can necessarily add another commission to the fold right now. I think that would be difficult. So I am in complete agreement. How we pick those people, I think, is a difficult question. I prefer 7 to 5, but I do think it's got to be, I think recommendations from the council members need to exist. But I would go with an ad hoc committee, but I think we should focus it on the idea that quarterly or monthly or whatever is appropriate, that they come to us with those ideas. And I think that can be some guidance for what the mission statement should be. And I think we already have that committee. I just think it's all the people who are here today who are that committee right now.
Yeah.
And if we can organize it down and have a group that when you come to us with these ideas, we say, hey, take that to the committee, let's see what they have to say, and then bring it back to us as more of a cogent, solidified idea that's going to be more helpful to get these implemented quickly.
Okay, I didn't get to present my idea yet. Or do you have a
Just
question?
there's still a motion on it. Okay, Randy.
So I just want to clarify, I think Ryan, what you made a sound reasoning or a sound rationale as to why we should have a commission. Is, first of all, again, that commission is a body that all of these individuals can actually go to and make their comments and make their statements, make their wishes known. And they can also still be a part of a ad hoc committee or a subcommittee of that commission. So what we don't want, which I believe, we don't want the greatest, latest idea coming to council and then having to be agendized and then having to go through that process. I think that slows it down. I think a commission would actually expedite it if it was ran properly. So that's just my take on that.
I have a question for staff based on that, if you don't mind real quick. If we do an ad hoc committee, does it require to have council members? And can it be in the same spirit as Randy's talking about as a commission? Or, because looking at it, and I read everything, but I can't really tell. And, other than the minutes requirements, because then there's, all the other formalities of the commission that may not be necessary. But could we do what Randy's saying, but under a committee form?
You hit a couple of points that I just want to make clear to you, because a couple speakers mentioned bureaucracy and talked about a commission, or the ad hoc committee sounded better because some of the other ones, sound like a bureaucracy. When we have a full commission, it means that they meet on a regular meeting schedule. The agenda has to be posted 72 hours in advance. There has to be minutes, which is all good for the public transparency, but it means being slower. We have a commission right now that I was talking to earlier today that wants to take action. They can't because we don't have time before their next meeting. So now it waits a month. So there are some challenges, and we weren't saying that just to say, it takes more staff time. It also slows down the process typically, versus an ad hoc committee, which can meet pretty much at any point. The other thing we mentioned in the report that yes, an ad hoc committee can include council members, a couple of council members or no council members, or pretty much any combination except for a majority of council members.
The only other limitation on an ad hoc committee is that it has to be up to 2 members of council or 2 members of planning commission. In other words, if you mix and match from more than one existing city body that is a Brown Act body, so that's the council and all the commissions, then that becomes itself a Brown Act body. So if you want an ad hoc committee that can be agile and move quickly without the necessity of the Brown Acts and that 3-day waiting period, it means pick a body and then up to 2 members from that body for a 5-member body, less than a quorum. And it doesn't have to have council. It could be an ad hoc committee of concerned citizens that are appointed by the council and directed to return with a plan.
It just can't have more than 2 elected people. So that's essentially.
Correct. Anything with 3 council members is a council meeting.
Right, I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I mean, I get that.
And the
But-
same thing for like,
But you confused me a little bit, Matt. I mean, if we create this ad hoc committee, would it be required to have 2 planning? I mean, it doesn't have any.
No,
commission.
not at all.
Okay, I just
No,
wanna
he
make
said
sure.
we could do it with
Okay.
citizens,
I
which is a
thought I
better
heard
idea.
it.
I
Want to
think.
make sure I heard it 2 ways.
let me
there, so.
clarify that point. If you, for example, created a committee that had 2 planning commissioners and 2 council members, that has to be a Brown Act
Okay,
body.
of course, okay.
Run that by me again,
About
because that's
zero.
my question.
Yeah,
Two-
so if you created a committee that has 2 members of the council and 2 members of the planning commission, for example, and other people, the fact that you have 2 members from 2 Brown Act bodies means that becomes a Brown Act body.
Oh, well, that.
So if
that-
you want to avoid that-
That nullifies my idea.
It,
More
it doesn't mean you
agile.
can't do it. It just means you need to.
More agile is 0.
Okay,
Yeah.
that,
Okay,
it,
okay,
it just
guys.
means, it just means what?
It doesn't mean you cannot do it. It means that it's subject to the Brown Act, which means you have to have agendas with 3 days
Slower.
notice.
Okay.
Okay, let me interpret. We got to get some order to this. We'll be here all night.
Okay.
What was being said, and I'd like to express my view, is that I would want to avoid Brown Act right at this point. And not because it's supposed to be secret, but so we don't engage in all of the bureaucracy and the cost and the staff time. And I heard some of the comments that were made here this evening about, well, we need to get the financing, and we need to get this, and we need to get that. It was a 3-2 vote, for those of you who were in attendance, on the declaration of an emergency, and we're turning this back into a bureaucratic snarl. If we go with making designated, appointed, elected officials right now, we're going to be right in the middle of it. I think when Bill started, he was on, in my view, on the right track. When I voted as the 3rd vote to declare this, was to add our voice to the chorus. I don't think that there are very many people that are receptive to the education, the non-climate deniers in this valley. I think we don't need to sell everybody on the idea that we have the problem. What we need to do is start to actually do something meaningful other than wringing our hands and saying, Ojai did it first. Things that, look to Berkeley and other places. I don't know if we have the political will in this town to do some of these things, but as Bill was, I think what you were getting at is that we need to take some steps that are under our own jurisdiction that might be helpful in getting us down the road, and hope that the other cities would join us. We did it with landscape equipment. It was a small thing, and not a whole lot of people are following us, but we need to do some more small things and not turn this thing into basically a giant unstructured workshop. And the city doesn't have the money or the staff to get engaged in that, and I don't think it's going to help us. I would say criteria number 1 is that whatever we do tonight should be something, as Bill said, to bring this back, say, within 2 weeks. If you have strong views on it, Randy seems to have strong views on it. If the 2 of you guys, that wouldn't require any specific posting, we could just go ahead and then try to create whatever this charter is going to be, and it can be, if you make it, we don't need, I think, another. Maybe this is just the language, but I don't think we need more commissions and, more minutes to be kept type of thing. We need a group of smart people who care, who get together and who say, hey, maybe we should not build any more buildings that depend on carbon to heat and cool and the materials in the building. A lot of people, this is being done right now, we just haven't addressed it. This group could pick those things out, bring them before the council, then we deliberate and actually take the action. And I'd like to remind everybody, both in the audience at home, we just had a general election in the city not that long ago. There were 4 seats open on this city council, and there was no competition for them.
4 candidates.
Those of us who are here, I guess if you're interested in the long pull in a political career, you think that's great, a free ride.
I'd like to remind the mayor that he ran against Severa Laura, so there weren't 4 unopposed seats.
Right.
There were 3.
Well, yeah, right. There was one competition, and the other 3 with an open seat didn't have any, and that's no offense to the people here. People here are willing to come here on Tuesday nights and go through all of this. So if there are people in the audience and at home who don't like the way it goes or who want to participate, I would certainly encourage them to sign up, and and have a vote. But if we keep creating committees rather than having this council who was elected by the people making the political decisions, there aren't going to be any decisions.
So,
Yeah, so I would like to, say that with regard to what Dr. Colomé said, I think this is an auspicious time because of the general plan.
Yes.
Everybody needs to understand, and I know we've heard this in this room many times, the general plan is the Constitution. Well, that may be a bit of an overstatement, but it is a very important document that we should have up to date, because if we don't, we're going to have all sorts of things imposed on this little town by the state of California. We have not done that yet, and one of the elements in this could very easily fit into this concept of an advisory group for climate change. So rather than thinking of it as a separate activity,
Yeah.
it can be a subset of something that we do have some money that's going to go into it, and we could get on with it. So if I might, I now don't want to table it, but Randy, would you have a problem with submitting this to two members of the council to come back with a proposed outline of something rather than us trying to do it here? And
well, this is I'm always open to what the council and the community would like to do. I just want to express, again, my opinion one more time. I sat on the Cultural Resource Committee that lasted over 3 years. It lasted that long because there was a tremendous amount of information that had to be digested by that group of people. It was really hard to come to a sound consensus on everything. And so therefore, I think that's why it took so long to actually get it back to us. In fact, more than once it failed, and more than once it was restarted, so that we could get something accomplished. The benefit to me that I see, and I am willing to go another route on this, is the benefit that I see it being assigned to either the Planning Commission, and it could be given back to the Sustainability Committee that's already created. I have no problem with that. But I think it has to go to a body that can receive information, help prioritize it, help identify the wins and the losses. There's so much information. Michelle sent me something about natural gas from the city of
Berkeley?
No, someone else, though, but yeah, and they studied it for 2 years just to come to some conclusion. And the fear that I have is if we don't have if we don't have some form of body that has a continuum to gather that information, what'll happen is an ad hoc committee sounds great, and 15 people would jump in, if not 25. And then once they got their initial thing done, they may want to drop out. And I just don't see the continuity in it. Whereas I see if it comes to something that's formal and something that has longevity assigned to it, I see the benefit. So I'd be willing to assign it back to the Planning Commission and let the Planning Commission actually do this work.
Okay, well, I never got to present my idea.
Okay, well, I know, okay, let's just go down the row here, and you'll be right after Bill. Bill?
That's what you said last time.
You have been
Okay, it's okay.
engaged 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Bill has been extraordinarily quiet this evening. That's,
All right.
and for him, that is extraordinary.
Yeah. Randy, my response to you is I think we're I think we're falling into the trap of trying to figure it all out tonight. Okay? And my thought was to have a small group on an ad hoc basis come back with us a report about how it should be done. Okay? In other words, come back with come back with a mission statement or a committee charter thoughts, how to structure it. That was my thought, not to try to figure it all out tonight. All right? And in other words, not even to make the decision about have a commission or not, but to have an ad hoc committee that basically, we all I like your idea, maybe that initial step could be done by someone that we all choose in terms of getting 5 people to report back to us in a very short time with how to go forward. That was my thought.
And so you see, suggesting what Randy was saying about each of us would put somebody on this and tell them
Hey,
to
get it done in 2 months.
draw it up?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
That was my thought.
So do I need to withdraw? I'm
Well, you could amend your
withdraw my-
amendment.
Well, let's hear from Sousa first, see if
Yeah,
we got
yeah.
anything
Okay,
now.
so is the existing Planning Commission Sustainability Committee considered an ad hoc committee?
Yes.
Okay, so my idea is to rename the existing Planning Commission Sustainability Committee, rename it the Sustainability and Climate Resilience Committee. And I originally thought we could expand it to include 2 council members, but that's not going to happen because of the Brown Act. But perhaps that existing committee could then include the, the people, appoint some people that we appoint. So that we wouldn't have, because what's the purpose of having a Planning Commission Sustainability Committee that, and what we're doing is the same thing as that committee. We're just going to expand the existing committee. However you want to look at it, or we disband that committee and we put the 2 planning commissioners on our new committee, is my suggestion.
Okay, but that doesn't even have a charter itself, at least I can't find it.
I don't believe it does. I guess if I can ask a question, would the membership of the expanded and perhaps renamed Sustainability Committee be composed of planning commissioners plus the public? Would it be composed of, I guess, no other electeds?
Well, because of the Brown Act, it can't include another elected official. Is that?
So Mayor, I think I can add to that is, I understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
What's easier to do is to give this assignment to planning and let the planning commission, if we choose to go that route, to name it. I don't necessarily think that we're there. I agree with what Councilman Wyrick and I believe Councilman Blatz and the mayor are saying, that let's appoint a 5-member committee.
Like a study committee.
A study committee. Let's give them 2 weeks to come back to us. Everyone out there has every one of our emails. Every one of you can send some form of a resume or some type of information sheet to us if you choose to do so. And a lot of us already have other people in the community that have already talked to us about this. Let's do that, and then come back and decide how we want to create a committee.
Yeah, after we get the report.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with
Quickly.
you, Bill.
Okay, is that,
Having said that, I'll go ahead and
amend your motion?
not amend.
Take
but-
a substitute?
But actually, take a substitute motion.
okay, so what we would do is each member of the council would recruit and designate a person to serve on this. It would be an ad hoc committee with a limited purpose to come back with a charter of exactly how they think it should move, and then bring that back to the council and see if the council agrees with it.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay?
And we would not be on that committee.
You could appoint yourself, I suppose, but
I'm not saying that I want to do that at all. I have plenty to do.
we would
I just want to
each
know.
choose somebody to
Yeah.
be on this thing to come back with a report to us.
Right.
There's no specific rule barring a council member from being on there, Sousa.
Max 2.
On a quorum.
You just can't have more than one, otherwise you end up with the Brown Act issue.
I would prefer that we not be on it.
Me too.
I'd prefer that there's a number of people here that spoke
Yeah,
very eloquently tonight about this.
That's how I feel.
So I would
Yeah,
again,
yeah, yeah.
let's get fresh blood.
I think we could appoint 5 people right now, to be honest, but,
Yeah, why
I mean,
not?
I know.
Well, I think we got to
We'll
do
come
it.
back.
We should, when maybe we can't pick them tonight, but we should
Yeah, we
give
can have-
ourselves,
we can have
by
the
the end of
city
the week,
manager,
we should
but
all give the city manager
Yes.
the name and
Yes.
having contacted someone who's
Perfect.
agreed.
Yes.
And then between that group and the city manager, they can figure out how soon they can come back on an
Exactly.
agenda.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that we recommend 2 people in case one does not choose to want to be on it.
Okay.
But that way, James has a number 1 and a number 2 from each council person that he can contact.
But how
Okay,
do
but
we
no,
know
wait a
that
minute,
we're not
look,
picking
just
the
a second. The way I was envisioning this, so we don't burden the manager with it, is each of us would contact somebody that we know that has a degree of expertise and interest in this subject and ask them to serve. And if they say yes, we give those names to the city manager so that they can coordinate for when they can bring their report back.
And if anybody would like to be considered, they should send an email to the city,
Well,
so they can get distributed to us, and we can forward them.
I would just like to say they already have. but if you want them to do it again, that's fine.
Well, we've got
It's
lots
not
of-
possible for us to know if everybody would be
Yeah,
interested
but I
in this
did,
email. Yeah.
okay, in full, in the interest of transparency, on July 30th, I did email you a list, but I believe included every single speaker here tonight.
Oh, okay, well, great.
So, you know,
Where is, yeah, why don't you send that to us again, so in case if you,
well, yeah. Yeah,
Just in case it's
I
gotten
believe
missed.
that's the case. Perhaps one or two, but, yeah.
I will
As look
second
around,
Randy's
yes.
amended motion since it hasn't been seconded. And
okay,
I ask that
it's
we-
moved and seconded. I think we're all, it seems like we're all generally in agreement.
Yeah, fine.
And if anybody lacks a nominee or a person that they're interested in, Sousa has a master list that we can.
It is not limited to the master list, in case you're not.
And I said, if you don't have one that you already.
Do we need to vote on this motion? Is it just an appointment of an ad hoc committee? What's the process?
So, as I understand it, it would be to appoint a ad hoc committee composed of one appointee per council member from the general public with expertise, interest, and knowledge regarding climate emergency mobilization issues and sustainability writ large, to develop a recommendation to the council on a broader committee structure plan approach for the full climate emergency committee to return to council for review and approval within a reasonable time as determined by the mayor. And that can be done by minute action by consensus.
And that's why we have you.
The only thing I thought I heard Randy
Yeah.
say, that we could each pick two people.
No.
No. we
I
brought it
think
back to
originally the suggestion was a first and a second in case the first says no, but I think the mayor
Right.
rightly points
Clarified
out
that.
that you should, the recommendation would be to make an appointment and then confirm who you're appointing and then contact the manager once you know who you're going to appoint.
Each of us will take responsibility to identify and get agreement and then furnish that name. And we should do it by Friday.
Yes.
If at all possible.
Yes.
Okay?
And as an ad hoc committee, they don't have FPPC requirements yet. So-
Right, as an ad hoc committee with a 2-week tenure, there's no FPC requirements, there's no Brown Act requirements. It is a agile group.
Thank you.
Ooh,
And we're not asking for anybody to be identifying who's on the committee, but the function of the committee and how they think it might work.
Got it.
Right, kind of to sort through all the options in
follow.
tonight's staff report and figure out what makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
We need a consensus on it, though.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody
think we do.
objected. but-
Yeah.
I think we have-
Okay.
Okay.
Not hearing any objections? Okay.
Great.
So
right.
ordered. That's everybody
By
get
Friday.
on the phone
Wonderful.
tomorrow. Okay, we go to item number 3.
I'm going to ask you,
What?
I'm going to be calling you tomorrow to find out who you're picking. So I don't pick the same person.
Appointees by Friday.
Well, apparently you got a long line.
Bill?
I think, yeah, that's doable.
Yeah.
It's quick, it's
I like
focused.
the process. It'll be good. It'll
They
be
don't
good.
presuppose.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is an analysis of facilities use agreement for tennis court fees. Mr. City Manager.
Oh, that was good. That was
Yes,
good
thank
discussion.
you.
You were-
So over the last few months, we had several conversations at council where concerns were raised by members of the public and by council about the process for renting facilities, the accuracy of the application process, whether there's adequate availability of tennis courts to the public, and whether the fees that were charged for rental of the tennis courts were appropriate. So we have provided a report on modifications we've made and are recommending to address those issues. First and foremost, we reviewed with Renee Peace, our new recreation manager, we've reviewed the rental and application process. We reviewed insurance documents, application documents, everything to make sure everything is accurate and appropriate. As a second item, we reviewed the availability of court usage, and we've made a recommendation that we limit court rental at any one time to 50% of courts. Previously, at different parts of the day, there were up to 75% of courts being rented at any one time, which we believe led to members of the public coming out and saying that they felt like there wasn't available courts to the public. So we've talked to the people who are renting and let them know that we are planning to implement a maximum at any one point of half the courts being rented, half being available to the public, and they have made adjustments as needed. And then finally, the big probably issue that is hanging out there is the court fee, the appropriate court fee issue. We've met with some of the big, heavy users of the courts, and we've talked to them about fees. We looked at what other cities are doing with fees, and we found that our fees generally are lower than average, I would say, and also that we don't charge a surcharge for for-profit businesses, which many other cities do charge a 25% surcharge for for-profit users. So at this time, we recommended at least implementing that change of a 25% surcharge for for-profit users, which would change their hourly rental fee from $6.50 an hour to $8.12 per hour per court. And we have met with court users. Obviously, they are not happy that we're proposing raising the fees, but the ones we spoke with typically understood why we were doing it, and also when we talked to them about the
You smell smoke?
the costs being lower here than typical. So
It could be.
yeah, it could be the cost.
Are we burning the coffee?
Yeah.
I mean, it always tastes burnt to me, so I don't know.
Are we burning the
We
coffee?
smell something.
Sorry, guys, the smoke alarms haven't gotten off, but we,
It's the first time I put the AC on.
yeah.
So
Okay.
ultimately, the one recommendation we're making at this time is to adjust that fee for for-profit users, and that fee can be adjusted administratively, but with the consent of council here. And I do have a public comment from one of the large users, Mark Weil. He is unavailable to attend, but he provided his comment, and the clerk has copies. And just quickly, I will say that he notes in this that he understands and supports the fee change, but he requested that it go into effect June 1st rather than January 1st to give him time to make the changes to tuition. But we, as you noted in the report, we recommended the 25% surcharge effective January 1st.
James, I have a quick question. Besides the fee change, there's the usage percentage change. In your conversations with the users of the courts, especially commercial ones, is that work with their business models and everything else?
Yeah, and I have Renee Peace here, and I've met with a few people, and she's met with a few. Renee Peace is our new recreation manager, and I would say everybody I spoke to understood the need to balance public versus private. But did you have any other comments from anybody? From anything?
Can you come up to the, Renee,
Yeah.
can you come up to the podium?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I really-
I didn't speak to all. Renee
But
spoke to a
Mr.
couple.
Weil and any other users are aware of the percentage change as well as the fee increase. right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and overall, you spoke with a couple of users too. Did they seem to support and understand the change to the 50% maximum?
Mr. Johnson and council members, I know that we've spoken, you've met with Mark, and I have not discussed this with Scott, who's the other main user. But the people that do the tournaments and everything, it won't affect them because they're not for profit. And then we have another user who's also, we only have 2 user groups that are for profit.
But I don't think any of the current users, other than Mark, were exceeding that 50% limit.
Oh, correct.
Correct. Yeah. So it shouldn't affect them.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no issue with the utilization of the court. Everybody generally understands and agrees to that. And so the question before us is what, when we start this, or?
Whether to implement the surcharge for for-profit users.
All right, what would the fiscal impact be for the 6-month delay?
So it's $5,000 a year is the expected impact. So it would be, very basic math would be $2,500.
So, Mayor, I have just, first of all, I'm sorry Mark can't be here. And his comment in his letter to us, I only wish our city council members would reach out more to the citizens of Ojai in a personal way to discuss this. And I agree with that statement. I believe when this initiated this discussion, it was based on how to accommodate the pickleball users of the community. And so what we tried doing is managing the users of the tennis courts and the pickleball people. And a lot of good things came from that, but in that discussion, there were comments made, and I think they're inadvertent. I don't think they were personal, but they could be construed as personal about individuals in our community making money or doing something wrong. And if that was conveyed, especially by myself, it wasn't meant that way. It was, again, to bring about the opportunity to create a pickleball-friendly community, and ultimately, we've arrived at that. So it was a win for all of us in that conversation. What Mark is saying, it probably could have started better off, and I don't disagree with that. The only other question I have regarding staff is, I understand the 25% now, and that brings us up to $8.12 an hour. And then are we going to put this on the annual review policy when we do rate increases? Because we're still, even at $8.12, we're still way, way down from what other entities are charging, especially commercial venues.
Yeah.
Commercial users. It's pretty low.
Yeah, we found in our research that it's pretty low too, so we are planning to bring back, just an overall increase at some point. The issue we were trying to address here was the for-profit versus non-profit and ensuring that there's available courts for the public, but that we have that on our list to come back in upcoming months.
Bill?
Quick staff question.
Okay.
Is there any need for any action by council in terms of enforcing adequate insurance requirements on the commercial users?
No, we've reviewed, Renee has spent a lot of time reviewing all the applications and insurance documents and getting everybody into compliance and up to speed. And we did find issues, but we've corrected them.
Okay.
So what do you need from us, Jim, or James?
Somebody pick a date and make a motion.
Yeah, just whether to make this surcharge effective and then when we would want it to be effective by.
Well, I'll offer a motion to approve the staff recommendation with the additional provision that the Park and Rec Commission come back with their recommendation on a time-certain fashion by our first meeting in January.
Would that be
And what
too late?
recommendations? And
Well,
what
the staff
recommendation
recommendation
are you
is that the issue of facility fees for recreation be forwarded to the Park and Rec Commission for a full in-depth review of fees and commercial, non-commercial fee structures. I just don't want that dragging out.
No, I just meant that if they don't come back till January, we can't implement it on January 1st.
Well, why are they going back
No.
to the?
No, so that is the second question that was asked, which I just forgot who asked
Right,
it about.
January to June.
About the overall fees.
The overall,
We had talked,
Oh,
we were
not
making
the
the recommendation to take
25%.
that issue to the Parks and Rec Commission.
right, so my recommendation would simply be accepting the staff recommendation with the additional provision for a performance standard for Park and Rec Department.
Great.
Okay.
Is there a second to that?
Have a
So
second to that.
Okay, it's
The
moved in.
increase in fees starts January 1st.
For the, on the current base, yes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, as I recall, we postponed this because Mr. Weil was in Europe, and so that he could be here. So, it's not like he didn't know. He's saying.
He had his input. I talked to Mr. Weil. He was concerned because the last time he was out of town, this issue got brought up. I know I forwarded him over to James, and I know James got to talk to him. I understand his concern about the price difference, but looking at that we're so far under market, that this city's been very comfortable in allowing him to build his own tennis courts. He has other facilities. I don't think the increase is so substantial that their tuition
Yeah, I
prices are
agree.
going to be
Yeah.
hurt. And I think we're giving them enough delay to be able to work that in. So
Yeah,
as
I
much
agree.
as Mark, I love you, but June, January seems like it might work better.
So that's our motion and
Yeah.
second.
Okay,
Okay.
then this is a money issue, so roll call.
Yeah.
Clerk, please.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina,
Yes.
Mayor Johnston,
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz.
Yes.
Okay, item number 4, extension of agreement for building and safety services with the Charles Abbott and Associates. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you. So last year, when we approved a one-year extension with Charles Abbott and Associates, there was a request from council to bring the item back no later than September to allow time for discussion and consideration of all options this year. So we brought it back early as requested this year to try to provide some time. Overall, we reviewed the performance. The one, I think, thing that will jump out to everybody is that building permits were down this year. We also saw that with planning, that we just had fewer permits come in. Having said that, building permits are cyclical. We see that they go up 1 year, and then then a couple years later they start to come down. So it's not completely unexpected. And then the biggest developers and projects that we have either got issued building permits last year or we know are coming next year. So it seems like this is the to be expected down year. So we brought other than that, from the city manager perspective, we are, overall satisfied with the building and safety services with Charles Abbott and Associates. I have spoken with Charles Abbott and Associates about issuing an RFP for code enforcement services to see what's out there and if we could get a lower cost or more hours for the same cost, or just a specialist in code enforcement. And they were open to offering the service as optional under the contract, and we could, if we get responses to the RFP, we can opt out of the Abbott portion. If we don't get responses, we can continue with Abbott for code enforcement. So
That's a great idea.
I'm recommending we pursue that option.
Okay.
Staff
We have a motion? Oh.
Staff question, real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Could the RFP that we would be approving, that you go out for, include at least proposals for technology deployment to aid in code enforcement, things like the numerous providers for various apps, cloud-based and some non-cloud-based, that enhance the ability of the citizenry in general to do code enforcement requirements? Could that be in the RFP to see if they could help with that?
Yeah, I'd much rather have a vendor come in who
That's
has
what I'm
that
talking
capability
about.
than we have to roll it out ourselves.
Yeah, that's all I'm talking about. And then the other issue is Abbott is required to handle the responsibility of archiving permits for input into our retrieval system.
For archiving, I don't believe Abbott is responsible for
Who
that.
is?
We have our building official here too.
Who handles that? I mean, we have an online permit retrieval system. Who's responsible for getting those permits scanned and into that retrieval system, the online retrieval system?
I'm not exactly sure who's set up through the city. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's one of the.
I think it's the planning and building technicians that actually physically do it. And
So it's not Charles Abbott, it's the,
Right.
okay.
Right,
Okay,
and we
but
can
that's handled.
We can confirm that. Yeah, so I think maybe I didn't understand the question. Is we put everything that every building permit we put into the Excella program.
right.
So I didn't think of it as archiving, but
Well,
but it is.
yeah, it
It's
is.
the planning and building.
And then it's supposed to be able to be online retrievable.
Yes.
That's the citizens portal.
Yeah, the citizens portal.
Okay,
So
we have identified who's responsible for maintaining that.
the planning and building technicians.
Okay. Any other questions of staff?
Just so, some clarity here on, you gave us a 4-year study of costs.
Yeah.
And yet we're missing the fiscal year 17-18 for Steve Stewart's process. Is that just, we didn't have those numbers, or?
It's because we stopped using them. So that 16-17 year was the transition. So that's why we have both. And then 17-18, we moved just to Abbott.
So 16-17, I just look at the number at $34,000. That was the cost that we occurred for outside services for building and safety official?
Only for it was like the first 2 months. And then it transitioned to Abbott.
Okay, and that's the 138.
The 138, yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions of staff?
With that, I'll make a motion to approve the
Okay, I
staff
have a
recommendation.
motion, second? We got a motion, moving second, okay. Do we have a contract, we need a roll call? Is that right, Matt?
Yes, because of the amount of money involved.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Okay. So now we go to item number 5, library parcel tax increase. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. A few months back, we talked about possibly, I think it was during the budget, we talked about possibly looking at a parcel tax increase to fund the library because we noted that we are, there hasn't been an increase. The current parcel tax doesn't include a cost of living adjustment. So there hasn't been an increase since 1996, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
Just a quick comment, that means that in real purchasing power, $35 in 1996 is about $22.15 today.
yeah, Yeah, and to your point, it's $35.
You know that,
do that in
Bill.
your
Right, yeah. Time value of money, present value.
Just taking money out of my wallet right now.
Okay.
What are you trying to say?
But it is it is $35 or $25 per parcel per parcel, and then in certain cases per unit. So per year. So it is a relatively minor cost. But so we looked at what. Exactly to that point, we looked at if we had done a cost of living adjustment over all these years, it would have been 58%. It would have been an increase from $35 a parcel to $55 per parcel. And so we aren't recommending to do that all at once, but what we're recommending is a 10% increase followed by an annual cost of living adjustment. And so we've recommended that we move forward with that. For the March 2020 primary election, we noted that the key points is that the city currently has provided $106,000 per year funding to the library since 1996. We're facing some increases, and we do think we need to look at bringing in more revenue to pay those costs.
If I understand what you're saying is, though, the general fund has now gone into the providing a subsidy because the other purchasing power is shrunk.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and with all the other things that we're faced with, that I think we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you need from us tonight?
Do we have any cards?
So probably, I don't know if
Do we have a card? Oh, yeah, I've got a card.
Mayor, I have a couple questions if you're done, James, or
Yes.
you have more to?
The one thing I'll say is that we did recommend a March, putting this on the March ballot. So there is some time sensitivity because we have to have that done by the end of October. If we want to do that, we could also wait and do it later. But that's, so there is sometimes sensitivity, and we would bring it back fairly quickly. So that's it.
So, Mayor, just a couple questions. So what are what I just heard is we're subsidizing $100,000 a year to the county library system
Right.
to keep the branch in Ojai open.
Well,
To a
none of it's
degree.
to keep it open, but to keep it, yeah.
But to
yeah,
keep it running.
Yeah, keeping more hours.
We're providing that parcel tax funding to the library.
Okay. Okay, or Rudy, is it whoever would like to answer that question?
What the situation is that in 1996, they added the parcel tax because the library was going to cut funding for the number of hours that they were going to do. So they passed the parcel tax, and the city committed to, we passed the parcel tax, so what we are doing is we essentially paying that $106,000 a year to the county to keep those 31 hours that were going to be cut. So it's not really subsidizing the county, it's our portion towards that $31 or those 31 hours that we were going to do per week. Now, I don't know what the actual cost was back in 1996. If it was $106,000, it's obviously costing a whole bunch more. And my discussions with the library is that for that piece of it, the actual cost nowadays is roughly about a little over $190,000. So there is a shortfall on that piece of the funding.
So is our increase going to make that funding deficit up? Or is it going to enhance it even more than that 90,000 I just heard, from 106 to 190?
Now, I would point out that the county is not asking at this point in time for $87,000 to cover that. So I want to make sure that that point is clear, that they're not asking for that.
Okay,
So they are asking for more support.
That is correct.
So they're asking for more support, but they haven't actually clarified what the support is.
Actually, I've had some conversations with the library from the county, and there are some people here from the county that actually wanted to speak, and the Friends of the Library that wanted to speak. But what there are a couple of pieces is that was to maintain the basic services in the library of 31, that 31 hours. What the library is actually requesting of all branches throughout the county library system is an additional contribution, an additional annual contribution to maintain the level of the I'm drawing a blank, the collections at an average cost for a library of our size. That's what they're asking for. So there's actually two pieces we've been thinking about. There's a $12,000 that they asked for previously, and then there's the other piece that's for collections, and then there's another piece that's actually for the maintenance of those hours and the staff time and, keeping the lights on for those 31 hours.
Okay, then the second question I have is, any tax in this county always has pushback and most taxes that are requested in this community, in the county, there's just a tremendous amount of pushback because I don't think people recognize the need of additional funding to provide the services, and especially the services that Ron's providing at the library today, which are, tenfold greater than what we used to have. So my fear is that if we're going to ask for this tax, have we had enough time to educate the community? And are there going to be any other asks for taxes that you're aware of coming up in the community that are going to be in conflict with this? So I'm just asking the city manager if he knows of anything.
Yeah, so the first point is if we decided to move forward with it, we would have the next 6 months to get the word out. So we would make that a priority. We haven't done it yet because we haven't been sure it's going to happen. But we would do the outreach and everything else. There are rumors that there are going to be other possible initiatives on the ballot. We don't have anything from the city, so.
Well, cannabis and.
But on the March ballot.
Yeah.
There's
March, not
the
November.
city doesn't
I know,
have any
but
others on the
It's still
March
coming,
ballot.
and it should be made aware.
Yeah.
And then there's because there is the school district has not formally said, but they have indicated that they may be trying to pass a tax. We don't know when, but it might be in March, as far as a parcel tax, so it hasn't been approved yet. And there is, if this council decides to change any taxes, there's been discussions about TOT, sales tax, other taxes, and we have the cannabis tax that we have slated for November. And
Mayor, could we hear
That's it.
from the cards? I think,
Yeah,
we're
I
starting to deliberate, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's a good
touched
point.
on,
Okay,
Again, I just
question to staff.
Those
Yeah.
questions are
Delivery.
fine. Thank you. I appreciate the answers.
Okay.
I'm good.
You good? Okay. I have a card here from Judy Oberlander.
I didn't know if you knew about all those.
Come on down, Judy. And I've also got Nancy Schramm on deck.
Good evening. My name's Judy Oberlander. I'm the president of the Ojai Valley Library Friends and Foundation, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. And thank you for understanding the importance of our city library to this community. It's really the heart of this community. And as you pointed out, it's giving so much more than it used to. And just a point of history, when that original parcel tax was done, it failed. Can you? Okay.
Because that's very sensitive.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
It failed the first time, and the second time it was presented, the Friends of the Library did a great deal of work to help publicize it, because it takes a 2/3 majority, and it did pass, but it takes a lot of work to convince people of the importance of the library to our community, and we really understand that. So this is a really complex issue that requires a measured approach, and we hope to be a part of that. The Friends are really committed to advocating for this, and we know that we will need to do so in the near future. But in order to get the results that we all want, we want to ask for time to develop a well-defined plan that we can achieve together. And I would like to introduce Nancy Schramm, who is the Ventura County Library Director, who has some more specific details on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy, and good evening, Mayor Johnston, members of the City Council, city staff. I am Nancy Schramm. I'm the county librarian, and I oversee our 12 libraries and the Ventura County Library System. I also have here with me this evening Mike Kumazawa, who is a program analyst with the county CEO's office. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, and we applaud you for this discussion. Thank you, council, thank you, city staff. As a library director, this is the conversation we want to have. We want to talk about our libraries. We want to talk about the importance to the community, what they mean to the community, and what is the proper level of funding for our library here in Ojai. So I also want to thank Judy as the president of the Friends of the Ojai Valley Libraries. They contribute numerous hours every year and many, many dollars. And a lot of times that's done by selling used books a quarter, 50 cents at a time. It is hard work. So thank you so much to Judy and for the Friends for being here. It's clear that this council and this staff understand our libraries are important. And there have been studies actually on return on investment on public libraries. In fact, a study that was done in the state of California not that long ago showed that for every dollar that we invest in our public libraries, we get a return on investment from anywhere between $3 to $6. So there is a real value in our public libraries. At the Ojai Library last year, we checked out almost 80,000 materials, both in print and electronic. We offer a wide array of programs, educational programs, literacy programs for youth, for adults, the annual summer reading program during the summer to stop that summer slide when the kids are out of school. We hosted 420 programs just last year at the Ojai Library, and 7,187 people attended those programs. There were also almost 15,000 uses of the internet, computers, and Wi-Fi access at the Ojai Library. So that's, I hear as a library director frequently people say, well, why do we need our public libraries? We have the internet now. Well, that's one reason precisely.
Yes.
We need our public libraries because there's a lot of people who don't have that access. Can you imagine living in today's world without access to the internet and to computers? The background on this a little bit, and I realize there's been a transition here in the city, but the background is that earlier in 2019, Mike and I came out and had a discussion with the former city manager, and we talked about our levels where we're at with funding at the Ojai Library. We also talked about the fact that we were going out and talking to all the other cities that we serve, Ventura, Port Hueneme, Fillmore, so it's not just Ojai, and we were talking about the need to bring our funding up to at least a minimum of what is the California average per capita expenditure on collections, because I believe at the Ventura County Library and here in Ojai, we should be at least at that average per capita expenditure. So what that meant for the city of Ojai was that there would be an additional contribution, in total of $24,000 per year that would bring them up. But the good part of our conversation was that we were proposing that the city step up with that $12,000 and the county would match it. That would be an ongoing match from the county funds. So that made this a great opportunity, we thought, for the city to work collaboratively with us and make this a true partnership and a true collaborative effort to really get those services to the residents here in the city of Ojai. And there is no doubt we need to look at that parcel tax. It passed in 1996. It's been the same ever since. I really appreciate Rudy's comments. He's right on target with his numbers after just a short discussion. And, that really needs to be closer to $200,000 to maintain that same 31 hours of service per week. But here's what I would say. My recommendation is to take a step back and let's have a discussion. And the reason I say that is because I believe there is opportunity for us by working together to identify exactly what the numbers are and what the needs are. And as Judy said, really come together with a well-defined plan for that potential parcel tax measure. I think that if we really look at the actual numbers and just clarify and talk together, we can really make sure that we're meeting the needs of the Ojai community. That would be my recommendation. I've gone way over my time. I apologize. I get started
Had a
talking
question.
about libraries. I can't stop.
Could I ask a question?
Okay, well, we have a few questions for you, and we thank you for being patient and sitting through all the rest
Thank you
of that.
both for staying so long.
Happy to
Okay,
be
we'll
here.
go with Ryan and then to Bill.
How many is the matching program for other cities, or is that just for Ojai?
It was for every city,
Okay.
and I'm happy to say 2 cities have already stepped up, put that contribution into their fiscal year 19-20 budget, and we have come in with a county match. So there's already 2 cities out there stepping up. This is raising us all up throughout the system.
Okay, Bill?
One concern I want to bring up, you didn't mention anything about facilities and grounds. And to me, that's extremely important, given the high profile with the wonderful location that we have, in that we've had a real problem because you didn't have the money to take care of especially the grounds. And, you know, we've talked about the need to maybe have a facilities plan, maybe redo the grounds, maybe get rid of the wall that it may be starting to create some problems, you know, and I mean, it's something to study. But one of the thoughts we had is that we could go to the people and say, this is part of what we need to, you know, prevent this from being an eyesore and have it be more of an asset to the community. So not just operations, but also facilities enhancement. So, you know, that's not general across the board. That's specific to our town. I just want to raise that issue with you. That's something I could see being supported by a city-specific parcel tax. That would be part of the rationale. And then one quick question, I'll yield Randy.
Go ahead.
To me, if we're going to increase the parcel tax, to me, the support for it, I mean, what's it going to matter, the difference between $35, $45, $55, when we're talking about, you know, homes that you can't, you know, I mean, most single-family residences, you can't buy for less than, you know, $700,000 or $800,000 now. So, I mean, it's almost immaterial, is what I'm trying to say. So, to me, the effort required to get a parcel tax increase, it's not going to matter that much, whether it's, you know, 30% or 58%. And so that's just my thought, that from the political point of view, we define what we need, what we want for our community, and we sell it. We tell people the need for it. Anyway.
I like that. I like that. Go
You're
get
not going to
'em,
hear an
kangaroo
argument from you
attitude.
at the vote.
Are we deliberating yet?
Mayor,
Are we deliberating yet, or?
No, not
Not
yet.
yet. I should have
Any
some
more questions and answers?
I just need some clarity. So I don't necessarily, just quickly, I don't necessarily disagree with my fellow councilman, but we do have a number of people that are on a limited income. So as much as the new house values today are at that level, they're not at that level for everyone. Now, the other question I had is I'm a little lost here. We're trying to bring our level up to 200,000. The first it was 190, now it's 200. So let's round it off. I agree. But the other thing is I didn't understand this matching $24,000 that you're seeking immediately. So if the city had if someone had came to us during the budget process and said, can you match this fund, and the county will match this fund, no one came to us. So we, at least I don't remember that being a part of the conversation. Someone
think
could
so.
clarify that, but I don't think we have that. What would that $12,000 do today? And why is it just 12,000 if you need technically 100,000?
Okay, I think the question, that's probably directed to our city manager first, rather than putting the librarian on the.
Well, so my understanding is, I think what you said, you met with the prior city manager at some point.
We did, and we
February?
understand there's been a transition, and I can only imagine the challenges you have in your new position.
Yeah,
We
that's
did
what it
have a
was then.
Okay,
conversation.
so I think we have the information.
clarifies that. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have okay, thank you very much.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
do we have
Thank
a
you.
motion to, what?
This-
No, I think we had the two.
Has everybody spoken?
I don't have, what, Carol? Mayor Carroll?
Everyone,
Yeah.
Mayor Emeritus. Yeah.
Mayor Emeritus.
That's right. I was shocked to find out that the city of Ojai does not contribute one dime to the collections, which are the books in an Ojai library. Not a single dime do we give to collect and pay for the books, the materials, the e-books, you name it. I mean, what a bargain we've had all these years. The $12,000 would go strictly for collections. The parcel tax is for hours. It took twice to pass. The first time it did not. We were faced with a situation of having the library open all of 24 hours a week. With the passage of the parcel tax, which I must say the Friends of the Library worked very hard to get, and we're willing to work it again, is basically to maintain the hours. The collection would be nice too. The thing is, with Prop 218, we need 2/3 of people to say yes. So I think that the campaign, the education, and all of the folks involved in the city requires time. I just don't see the Friends having the time to get this across. People say tax, they say no. Many of you don't even walk into the library anymore. You're getting your materials online, and you can get so much from the library. I mean, to us in this room, 35, 55, it's, you go to Barnes & Noble's, the only remaining bookstore, thanks to Amazon.
Books would argue with that.
And you spend that easily on one book or two. It's a bargain. But we do need time. So I think the request is not to table the time that we put the parcel tax on the ballot so that we can really present a good campaign. And the Friends are more than willing to work hard, not only with the campaign, but financially supporting the campaign. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Okay.
Two thoughts. Do you have what I'd like to hear is a specific recommendation of how much more time you need.
I would say
And-
April or May.
Okay, which we put on the November ballot.
Right.
And the other point I want to make is that there's kind of a general feeling, analyzing the March versus November, that this kind of tax might have a higher probability of passing in a March primary than a November general election.
Yeah, it may be, but
And I
I
just
think
wanna bring
that
that
the
up.
Friends and the library itself want that time and to recommend to you when it should come on the ballot.
So would you, and so just a thought, would you recommend, so I think you all probably talk to each other.
Yes, we did.
Would you rather have us simply not act on this tonight, or should we continue it into a time
Yes, I
certain?
would like you to not act on this night
Not act
and to
on it.
table it until a time when our librarian and Friends say we're ready.
Okay, so we don't, in
Thank
other
you.
words, just don't do anything until we hear from you, is what you'd like?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, is that what the librarian is saying? I had the feeling that they were anxious to see the thing on the ballot.
Rudy wants to talk. Rudy wants to talk.
Now, just a second, I'll take, yeah.
Yeah, what I would recommend, I wouldn't necessarily limit us to any timeline yet at this point right here tonight. What I'd say is let's talk about it, let's discuss it for tonight. Maybe bring this back to council sooner rather than later, as quickly as we can, but have an initial discussion. So we're not having that discussion for the first time here since there's been a transition. It might very well be that we sit down and we talk and we decide, hey, this makes sense, let's do this in March, or let's do this in November. But my recommendation would be, let's bring this back in a few weeks at least, and make that decision after we've had time to talk it through a little bit more.
Okay, well then-
For one thing, I'd like the opportunity to clarify just some of the numbers that we're talking about, so you guys are making an educated
My only thought is that
decision.
there's a flexibility if we continue it until we hear back from you. That helps with the agendizing, to make it more nimble and quick if you do want to move quite fast. So that
Okay,
would
so
be,
your suggestion is if the
Continue.
county would contact the city manager when you're ready to go.
and we
Done.
continue the item until we hear from,
Yeah, okay.
We already have plans in the works for
Okay.
discussion, so
So
you
it
bet.
sounds like we, no pun intended, but all on the same page, okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
the-
a good library statement.
Yeah, right, okay.
so we
Thank you.
continue.
Rudy, is there,
I just want to make one question. During earlier in the evening, I met with them, and I became more aware of the overall situation that we're looking at here. And one of my concerns is that we don't want to go forward with the home renovation and obtain financing for half of it and be stuck. I think it behooves us.
agree.
I think it behooves us to look at a more consolidated approach and look at our overall picture and study this out just a little bit more to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right level at the right time.
okay, so we got a couple of weeks. By all means, you and the city manager keep talking to the librarian. Okay, we are going to continue this matter till we hear back, and the city manager will agendize once ready. Okay, let's go to item number 6, and that should, well, look who's here. Outdoor dining encroachment permits.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. City Manager, do you want me to go ahead with that?
Go for it.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate you getting me in before 10:30. Thank you.
We're trying to get out of here by 10:30.
Okay, we'll make it fast. This is something the council back in July requested information on the city's outdoor dining permit fee structure. So this is a discussion on the fee structure of the existing outdoor dining permits. And important note, this is the city right-of-way, the public right-of-way permit fees. There are separate permits that are issued on private property by the Planning Commission.
Yeah, is this, excuse me, can I ask a question, Mayor, on
Yeah,
this
go ahead.
language? Is it city right-of-way, or is it a special city improvement district that we're talking about?
This would be any public right-of-way.
Okay, so you're not distinguishing between the special improvement district that the plaza represents and general sidewalk right-of-way?
Correct.
You're treating them the same way?
Yes, in fact, there are some that are outside of that limit.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
I'll have more to say about that later, but I just want to make sure what your presentation is, they're the same. A sidewalk right-of-way as well as the plaza improvement district is the same.
Use of any public properties.
Yes.
In effect, yeah,
Okay.
broader, okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so that was back in 1997 that this ordinance was set up, and I think the first permit that was issued, it's important to state also that before Public Works can issue this permit, there has to be a conditional use permit issued by the Planning Commission. And those permits have varied in how well they outline exactly what is required for those areas, but they all specifically state that outdoor dining is required. Generally, they talk about maintaining it in a nicely maintained order with nice-looking seats and so on. So that was back in '97. That was started. The first outdoor dining permit was issued to Tottenham Court, if anybody recalls that.
Yeah, I do.
And that was, which is now Osteria Monte Grappa. And then the second was Movino, which is now the Vine. And that was a very similar time. Currently, there's 4 permits issued, and those permits are in the report. There's the Vine, Osteria Monte Grappa, the new one at Sage, and at the Zoo restaurant as well. The city's existing structure is the initial permit fee is $325. That's just to cover the initial cost of sketching out the area and calculating the square footage and so on. And an annual renewal fee of $85. And then the square footage varies as shown in the report. The first 150 square foot is $4 per square foot. The next 150 square feet is $2 per square foot. Then the remaining above that would be $1 per square foot.
And that's for 12 months?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then you can see a comparison table we did. We looked at various other cities. That's on page 3 of the report. And you can see Ventura, that's the only other city that has a per square footage charge. So they charge $453 for a one-time permit fee, $2,082 for a license agreement fee, and then $15 per square foot with a cap on the square footage fee of $5,000. Santa Barbara has a one-time application fee that for 1 to 4 chairs, they do it by chairs, it's $500. 5+ chairs, $1,000, and annual renewal fee of $250. Carpinteria has a $195 for the new permit and a $120 per year fee after that. Moore Park has a $150 encroachment permit fee, period. Camarillo has a $65 one-time fee, period. Santa Paula, Thousand Oaks, Port Hueneme, Simi Valley, and Fillmore have no permits issued. We had some issue getting any more information. They just seemed to be that there was no demand for them, and they don't have a permit fee structure set up. And then Oxnard just came out with this new parklet pilot program, so they're waiving the fees is kind of promoting it. The idea, if you recall, a parklet being taking a parking space and converting it to a dining or seating area outside. So the last page of the report, we did a little comparison of the only other square footage allocation if you compare Ventura versus Ojai fees. So on the small side, at 300 square foot, which would be the Vines area, the city of Ventura would have a $453 one-time fee, the $2,082 for the license agreement fee, and then the 300 square foot times their $1.25 per square foot. I'm sorry, per square foot per month. That's important. So that's when you calculate the 300 times $1.25 per month, it's $4,500 per year. So their total for the 1 year is $7,035 for that 300 smaller area. That's compared to what the city is charging $1,225 for the first year and $985 for every year thereafter. And then if you use the larger area, which would be comparable to the Sage restaurant, which is recently opened, Ventura would have a total for the first year of $7,535, and the following years would have that capped limit of $5,000 per year. For the same comparative area in Ojai, we are charging, for that exact area, $2,211 for the first year and $1,971 for every year thereafter. So that's the report.
Mayor?
Okay, Bill.
I might make a couple comments. I just did a quick calculation, and for the space, and I do distinguish between the Plaza Improvement District and a sidewalk right-of-way, because in my mind, there's a fundamental fairness issue here, where everybody's assessed on the basis of their square footage for the Plaza Improvement District that supports a common area. But if some places, some of the businesses are using the common area and some are not, they're getting an additional benefit that the others are not. And to me, it comes down to kind of almost more of a landlord or lease or lessee relationship that would be more appropriate to think about this. And I just, in service to thinking about it, let's say that you're right now, let's say you have 150 square feet of that Plaza Improvement District. 325 plus 85 plus 600 is 1,010 a year. That comes down to 56 cents per foot per month. I can tell you, on the real estate business, what a deal. And I just think that we ought to, especially in that Plaza Improvement District, think about some adjustment. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, well, and things that have happened in the past that didn't take that kind of economic analysis. When a private property has substandard parking spaces that get converted to patio and become retail space for free, pretty much, at the expense of the parking,
Right.
yeah, was not thought through before. So I agree with your concerns. So what is the council's pleasure? Is there some direction for staff? Randy?
I'd like to clarify Bill's analysis. So what you're saying is the people that utilize patios in that special district are getting a benefit?
What I'm
and
saying,
not being charged the appropriate?
their assessment fee is not based on their patio use.
Okay.
All right, you correct me if I'm wrong. It's based on the enclosed private
Square footage of
area
the inside, of the
that
interior
supports
of
the
their
common
building.
area,
Okay.
okay? So the people that are additionally using the common area are getting an additional benefit that others are not getting for the same assessment rate, okay? Now, and what they're paying for that right now is cents per month per foot.
Well, that's all I needed to clarify. I just needed to hear it said that way, and
That's what
so
I'm
now
saying.
So now I understand that.
Yeah.
The sites that you have on here, Greg, it's 3 are in that special district and 1 is outside, or 2 are outside?
Yeah,
That's correct, yeah, 3 out of 4 are
3 out of
inside.
4?
and the area next to Libby Park, gotta remember, what's the name of that? There's 2 restaurants.
Well, all I'm trying to say is, would we have to
Those,
go
no,
back
the other
to-
side of the street.
so we
Is
do.
that a common area, part of the Plaza Improvement District? The 2 restaurants that are behind where Nomad used to be?
Ojai Harbor.
Yes.
Are
Right.
those, so those are using common area, right?
They don't use common area, that's not.
Those are all private areas?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to go back to the, and maybe this is a question for the city attorney. We have a structured agreement with that special district regarding what we're charging. Would we have to go back and renegotiate that agreement based on if we decide to increase any fees? Or where we can increase fees without violating or invalidating that agreement that we have with the special district?
Yes, the city council, upon appropriate approval, can increase the fees charged for renting city-owned land independent of the Plaza Maintenance District. Because the Plaza Maintenance District funds, with the property owner's approval, specified maintenance activities on that public land. The city can independently charge whatever amount the market will bear for exclusive use of said public area.
So I just want to clarify, so what we're saying, these outdoor patios are ours, they're not theirs.
Correct, they're
And
owned by the
Right now,
city.
they're utilizing them to generate income
Right.
privately.
Right, as is noted, the situation for these 4 and any others like them is that is an effective rental of annual exclusive use of an outdoor area.
Have we had any discussions with these entities regarding this?
We haven't about any sort of fee increase at this point.
I just want to say, they are using that space to derive sales tax income that does come back to the city. It's not as though it's just not monetarized to us at all.
Which is, I think, 7%.
Well, our cut is, I
Our
think,
cut is
1%.
1%.
Or,
So
yeah,
we're getting
7.
1%.
We're getting
so-
1% of the sales from there, but if, for example, if they didn't use that space, we'd be getting nothing from it other than the rental fee.
And I just think that maybe charging 56 cents a foot, we're well in the inelastic range.
56% plus
56
1%
cents.
of gross receipts.
Yeah, but 56 cents per
Plus
foot.
1% of gross receipts.
56 cents per foot per month. Go out and try to rent some outdoor space like that, I mean. I just think that there is room for a little upside without impacting use for
Well,
It needs to be gradual, though, if it's.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's interesting, I have this discussion with a number of people, in fact, one today, about the cost of doing business in Ojai and the use of facilities and the perception of that we have way too many food services and alcohol service establishments in the community, and they've increased greatly over the last 2-3 years. So that's one thought. I don't, and my argument back is we're not Santa Barbara. I don't necessarily think we have a major alcohol problem or issue in Ojai, but we do have an awful lot of food and beverages establishments that are doing that. Is this a method of trying to curtail that business if we
No,
increase these fees?
I was conceiving it, I raised the issue purely as a fairness issue.
Okay.
I just think it's just
Well,
purely
if I
fairness.
may add, if anything, this would increase it, because what you're doing is you're taking that outdoor space, and you're essentially limiting it to a business that can make enough of a return on that outdoor space to pay for it, and that's probably going to be significantly limited to food service and alcohol service.
Right.
And that's a phenomenon that's hitting all of the downtown areas all over because
Right.
of the internet and the big box stores and things that brick and mortar stores
Well,
have a hard time.
The other part of that conversation too is I just have a sense of the saturation that's taking place. I remember where you could go into a lot of establishments in town and have to wait a half hour to get a seat. And that's down to less than 15 minutes, sometimes less than 10. Sometimes you can walk in and get a seat. So again, I think that's going to thin itself out in the process. But my concern is that we're not using this as a methodology to.
If I could make one other comment, Mayor, and I think there's also an issue that what they're fencing off is what was originally designed as an artistic statement, the common area, the design and the free circulation. So this is taking away from, to some degree, aesthetics and the circulation of the public. And I just wanted to raise the issue of whether or not that, 56 cents a foot per month is appropriate for us to be getting for that privilege. That's all. And I would suggest maybe we just ask the city manager to look at, what might be an appropriate, raising of cost.
Well, I will say this. I would prefer a per chair charge, because when you're a restaurant, the way you make your income is the number of chairs you have. If you decide to put 2 plants outside in the square footage, you are losing money on that space. But if you put a chair in there, that's where you're deriving your money.
That's a good thought.
I think that that's more economically proportional, but and then if somebody doesn't want to pay it, they can always figure out a way to rework it, but it's maybe still not totally unused.
I don't disagree with that. I think that I think we have time to do a study of both, and I think we also need to know what are the actual rates of that these facilities are. What is someone paying per square foot right now? Is it for
What they're paying for rent in the enclosed spaces?
for the inside,
I can tell you
it would just be
It's
interesting.
a lot more, right? We know it's a lot more.
Well, all I'm trying to say is that might help us to make a better decision.
Right.
Well, that's a good point. I wouldn't want this to cost any jobs, because those jobs would probably make us more money in the community than the fees, because we're not talking about a lot of fees either way. But I do think we're doing this in absentia of really any opinion from the operators. We only have 4 on here. It would sure make sense that if we are only looking at 4 places that are going to deal with this, that's a small enough group that they should be included in the process a little bit more.
I just thought I'd raise the issue.
It's worth looking at.
I think it's valid.
Yeah.
It's valid.
And I do hear from some of the merchants or the business people down there that their rents have been being jacked.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, rents
been
are
extraordinary, which this would just add to the burden of, profit margin for these places. So,
And my
anyways,
only comment on that is that, everyone's had the same burden on the rent, but some of them are getting a little help, by being able to put, revenue yield out on the common area, the others are not. And that's where the fairness thing comes in.
But, it's hard, though, too. For example, where Sage is using that common space, it's almost not utilized at all. I mean, it's a whole different space than the space the Vine uses, for example. That's much more highly traveled and is right through the walkthrough. And there are some, but I agree with you. The fairness problem is we should try and make it as fair as possible, but it may not be totally possible to make it perfectly fair. But I think that's a good point. I think we ought to make it at least accountable, that everybody's got some similar.
So we're just comfortable with the city manager looking at this a little bit more with the Public Works Director?
So we
I have a
will
question.
receive and file and let the Public Works Director go home to his family.
Yeah, but I want to go home too, but I do have a question.
Can we let him go? Of him
No.
or of us? 'Cause
No,
there
no,
used to
of
be
Greg.
Is that
of
an
Greg.
oxymoron
But,
here?
Greg, there are, I'm a little bit, I'm pretty much half asleep, but I can't I'm not understanding. Does that mean that all the other people that do outdoor dining do not have a permit?
No, I'm sorry. These are the only people that are using the public property for outdoor dining.
Okay, so like in front of coffee shops, isn't that?
Java Joe?
That's private property.
The Java Joe?
Yes.
And
Private property, I believe, along that area.
Coffee roasting company, all
Yeah,
of
the
that
building
is
structure,
private?
those
Oh,
buildings
I
out
see.
front.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it's not unusual for those facilities to be built with the outside area being included
Yes.
for
Okay.
a single table area. But I agree, the ones that aren't is different.
For instance, the new Topa Topa Brewery, that's all their private property out
All
there.
Sea Fresh in front,
Yeah,
even though those aren't in the
yeah.
same district, that's
Right.
all not
Private
private.
property.
Yeah, okay, some of it was just a little bit blurry, because it seems like it's a walkway.
Okay.
And
So
then,
you're gonna come back with an updated report for us.
Right, reach out to the people that have the permits and notify them the consideration is up. Check out what the existing rates are for rents and so on around the city in that area.
And also look at per square foot versus per chair.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the only other people going per chair were Santa Barbara, and I know they're having issues with their State Street trying to liven it up, so I think they're trying to promote it up there. I didn't really mention that here, but a lot of these cities were, for instance, Oxnard is promoting, they didn't have a lot of public property available. They didn't want to infringe on the walkways, and they were promoting, trying to liven up the street frontage.
So the
that's
chairs,
that part of the
not
program.
at Sage, but at Rainbow, those are not sidewalk?
That's private.
That's private.
Yeah,
too.
that's a unique one. That whole roof structure comes out and clips off in that area.
We could almost say from the curb, that 6-inch curb and maybe 5 foot in on most of the,
Well, I know,
most of the
it
property.
seems like
in
the
Ojai.
chairs are
Right,
being-
hours and anything inside of that.
I thought
It doesn't mean it's not necessarily encroaching a little wide.
Yeah, yeah, I think.
But it is, there is, it's not unusual,
Little-
you know.
I think,
commercials to do that.
sometimes I think that, yeah, they move the chairs around, but.
Okay, we don't want to over-service this account, so we'll let, what is the direction then to the city manager to take it back and let us know when you feel?
Yeah, we'll meet with the property owners and talk about some options.
Yeah. And be gentle with them. As it's pointed out, they do.
Well,
present-
just
do
like
some
Mark
sales
Wiles said,
stuff.
I wish I was here when you guys did it. These 4 property owners would probably like to at least be part of the conversation before we
Yeah.
make a decision.
For instance, Sage, right, they just opened,
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, and
planning
they,
on that
yeah,
too, right, so-
and we don't want to put anybody out of business or lose, you know, because we
But we
gotta make
want to
sure
be
we do it
fair.
right.
But we want to be fair.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Sorry for keeping you so late. Okay, we are to council member reports. Randy, you got anything? You don't have to. Okay,
seriously,
good.
that's all
Ryan,
quiet
you
on
got
the western
anything?
I do. I got a couple quick things. The one is October 2nd is Ventura County Clean Air Day. And there was a proclamation issued at the Air Pollution Control District meeting where I was our representative today. The chairman, David Pollock, he's a council member in Moore Park, asked that since Ojai was one of the 2 cities that was not meeting its federal requirements, and now we are, he asked if it would be something we'd be interested in to have a presentation on that day in Ojai and maybe do some sort of demonstration. I talked to James about this earlier today while I was at the meeting. I also spoke with Russell Sidney. He said he would be happy if we could get it organized to bring a couple people out and maybe do a quick, it would be like an electrical vehicle demonstration, maybe just at one of the chargers here. And if we can work with APCD to have them come out, or if I as the rep need to do it, whatever we do, maybe issue a proclamation. And then the only other question would be if the city wishes, and this crosses over to a future agenda item, if we want to name October 2nd Ojai Clean Air Day as well, we would have the next council meeting to do that beforehand. So I would suggest we do that maybe as an agenda item. And then James and I can help coordinate with APCD and maybe bring some people out. And I know Susan might be interested, but we can.
We're going to do a bike train for
Okay.
5 days, if the chief will help us. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm thinking we just organize something, and James may have some other ideas, but that is, anyway, we'll work on that. The other one is, I just want to let everybody know that one of the new directions Air Pollution Control District is going, because they have not been mandated generally for greenhouse gas emissions, but we're focusing on that. There's also a new director, Mike Viegas, who was there for a very long time, is now retired, and there is a new director from South Bay in LA. He is very good, very well, comes with an amazing resume. He had his first meeting today. They're looking at high greenhouse gas refrigerants. That's a new thing. We're trying to get grant money to be able to do those inspections. And the other thing, I want to bring this up now because we have our meeting with the school district before our next meeting. I constantly see down there at AP, what we are often doing is approving grant money to go to different organizations. One, for example, this time was Coltis Farming Incorporated, and I don't know if it's Jim Coltis, but I think it's his family's farming. This is outside the city, but in the valley. But I want to make sure everybody who's farming and others, there's a lot of money that APCD gets as grants and is doled out to to replace equipment that was more polluting to less polluting. And we don't get a lot of requests. We have all these active people in our community who are so interested in environmental stuff, but we don't get, I'd love to help anyone who might fit within that scheme to go to APCD and potentially get any funding to change out their things. In addition to that, we almost always are approving money to go for natural gas conversions on school buses, and I'm not sure where the Ojai Unified is on that, and I've never seen their name come up on any of it. And it would sure make sense that since we are some of the worst there in the county, that Ojai Unified should be working we just did, Oxnard, all these other
Yeah,
communities.
their buses were reduced, I think, from 10 to 3.
Yeah, well, hey, however many there are, but I don't believe they're natural gas powered. So
Yeah.
I know we're going to have plenty else to talk about.
Yeah.
But I do want it to be just want to make everybody aware. It would sure be a great thing. I would love as our rep at APCD to help Ojai Unified to clean up anything.
Nice.
There, just
Sounds
one quick
good.
comment on that natural gas thing. As much as I agree with it. I believe that there's a federal mandate by 2050 that all of these buses, all those vehicles of that type have to be electric. So all this big conversion that we just did at Gold Coast regarding that new natural gas plant, it's a great expenditure right now, and it's really needed. But in 25 years, it's going to be outdated, and they're going to have to actually change that whole system to electric.
Well, and that may be the case, but the life of the buses may not even be that long. But I will say this, this is not, APCD has funding, but most of it's grant money that's out there that APCD traps and then decides where it goes. So this is money that's hanging out there for free for the most part, and it's doing a lot of good in our county, but it's disproportionately not coming into our valley. And I would like to see that change, and I hope everybody here can share that information so we can get some more productivity out of the valley.
Okay, great. The only item I had was that our disaster council had its meeting. We try to meet every 2 months at least. And the one request I have of staff is that we have Public Works give us an assessment of the combustible materials in the perimeter of the town, as well as the cleaning of the lots. And we need to start emphasizing to our population again, as it was brought up by some of the people in public comment, but that's really probably the most imminent and critical thing that we're faced with. So.
Well, it's interesting how we always correlate heat to fire, when the reality is our fire season is heading into now. That's when with high winds is when we actually have.
High winds and low humidity.
December.
If I could just add to that real quick, James, before you were city manager, right when I first got elected, I talked to Steve and I wrote him, and I think I sent it to Sousa too. One thing I had addressed was an inventory of sites like the field, what is it, the Santa Susana Field Laboratory that's been such a mess, and it's been cleaned up forever and ever and ever, and it's never been done, that we don't really totally have an inventory. There was no inventory that I'm aware of anything as valley assets. I don't know if we know in the city, but specific targets that, especially too, that we should have inventory of for fire purposes. If there's when a fire rolls through, we need to be able to prioritize some of those. And I don't know what it takes to do that. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but it sure seems like information we should have readily available.
Yeah, I think we've started to get some of that information within the city, so we can put a report together and bring that back. Valley-wide, I don't know if we're there yet, but we can start looking.
I don't think that might be something Johnny's group would do, or should know.
Well, the fire protection district though does that kind of work. So for the greater area. Susan, what do you have?
Oh, you can help me with this. We met, Complete Streets met at Topa School, and
Bike routes and bike design.
The director who works with our
David.
school, David.
Yeah,
the
facilities person, I guess, or
yeah,
coordinator of facilities or something like that.
Yeah, he was just terrific. He is such a capable person. He works with Tiffany, the new school superintendent. So we discussed the routes to school for about a good solid hour and came up with a game plan. So the school, we realized we have to bring the school district into the Complete Streets. And so, okay, now it's coming back to me.
Right.
He's going to do a survey.
Right.
Because we discussed all the parents still driving, and of course, but he's going to have started a dialogue with the parents, starting with a survey on why they drive their kids to school rather than.
What would make them comfortable, or allow them to be comfortable.
Thank you.
For allowing their kids to ride bikes.
Yeah.
And also, I thought it was interesting. They're kind of a paradigm shift in looking at school grounds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was great.
And really realizing that the enclosure model probably needs to change.
Yeah.
Where you fence everybody in, and then and just real specific. If you have an emergency, why do you want to impede exit?
Yeah, they're going to open up the back.
So they're looking at, and that also. And that also.
It's interesting. I would just think the reason they're fenced in is to keep bad people out.
Just report, guys. We're going to wander all night again.
That was an interesting part of the report. I have one comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where that opens up more routes too.
Yeah.
I'm going to attend the EV demonstration that the county's going to have on the 17th. Okay. In particular, I asked them to have utility vehicles, because I think that we need to be looking at converting our public works fleet more to utility vehicles.
Yeah, and there's APCD money for most of them.
And they're going to have some demonstration ones. They'll take pictures. I want to educate myself and then be an advocate for us doing that at the next capital improvement.
Okay, and those are the kind of actions that when
And
we talk.
it feels like we're really good at passing all the environmental laws, and I appreciate that. But it feels like we're deficient in getting grant money for environmental issues.
Right.
And they go hand in hand. If you're
gonna
doing
bring that
one,
up.
you need to do the other.
We're going to bring that up.
And then,
in our next.
we're going to, I'm sorry, I have one more. I'm sorry.
Okay, a report, not a request in new topics.
No,
We're just
I-
doing
just
that.
a report. I want to, a couple of reports. I want to, a shout out to our deputy city clerk who is getting minutes done in a much more timely fashion, and it was a problem for a long time, and thank you.
Okay.
All right. and-
Ditto.
And,
Future agenda.
so, the rest can wait.
Okay,
Future
Susan, what are you, is there something that you haven't reported back on
I
that
thought
I
I
can't
was
wait?
afraid you were going to bang the gavel.
I'm
before-
going to if you
Wants
don't
to.
get to
That's
the
We have to
exactly what he
do
wants to.
future agenda.
We will do that as we move down the county. You-
Okay. I thought, you're making me nervous.
Oh, there, okay, now you get it out of your system. Okay, Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I was going to report on the disaster council. You already did. The only other comment is Monday, September 23rd at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. is the joint session with the school board, and we will issue a press release and information on that to the public this week.
Okay, great, okay, so are there any, you have an agenda item you want to talk about?
And I have.
Oh, just the one that Randy brought up,
7
the
p.m.
letter.
Which?
The letter from the city to the county about the pesticides. Is that have to
Whatever
be?
that letter was.
Does that need to be
I agree,
agendized?
let's agendize it, but I have I
But
think,
just a second, let's get some kind of
I didn't follow that letter about pesticides.
The one that Laura Ward at the
Oh.
beginning of the meeting.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was really a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so she'll submit it to me, and then we'll bring it back.
volunteer in the
Yeah.
future, okay? Let the
well, I was
private
wondering what,
force sector.
I was looking for the ask. and I wasn't getting it.
Notification.
So I.
There was
I do
no
have-
ask, they were-
I do have something for a future agenda, and it actually,
Mayor.
it actually coincides with the APC and everything that we discussed tonight, which is interesting.
Which is?
Bill and I would like to agendize the discussion on making the removal of all two-cycle equipment in the city of Ojai.
And small displacement.
And to do that, what we were trying to do is we've been talking to the city manager about talking to the APC and seeing if there's any grants or any funding out there that will help us to do a buyback to help the individuals in our community that can't afford it. I'm not sure what there is, but it's something that we can look at because I think that will help. But I think we need to have that discussion, and that's what we'd like to agendize.
I agree, yeah.
Real quick agenda inquiry.
So,
Okay, we're
that's
going to
the-
need more than that to put it on an agenda, but I understand what you're asking for. I think that's fine. Did you have any agenda points?
Just the proclamation for the Clean Air Day.
Okay, good.
No, that's okay.
Is it next meeting, we're going to have the Creek Road on the agenda?
Yeah.
And will the scope of that agenda, I'm requesting, please, include looking at what authority we have or don't have, or explore the options for posting restrictions on the parts that are next to city limits, or inside city limits?
We've looked at it, so yes.
But I mean, as long as we have it open for discussion at the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor,
He's got
also,
it.
one other thing real quick on that, October second date, the Clean Air Day. We are trying to coordinate having the electric mowers and electric power equipment brought in for the same day too, so that we can actually demonstrate all of this once again to the community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just that doesn't have to be part of the meeting at all, but just remember tomorrow's 9/11. Never forget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
be alert.